Chapter 1151. Sheng Yuanxin smiled and said, "He is very powerful. Otherwise, have you ever heard of a demon god making a human as a substitute god? Anyway, I think he is very smart and can speculate everything. It's amazing." The more Sheng Yuanxin praised him, the more Bu Rui was not convinced. He respected Sheng Yuanxin, who was a prospective god and the strongest among the descendants of the gods, and had always regarded her as a goal. But Sheng Yuanxin was praising another person, and there was even a hint of admiration in her words, which made Bu Rui lose his cool. He laughed and said, "Yuanxin, you think too highly of him. He is just a substitute deity, nothing special. If he Rushu, the current head of the crane deity's family, wants to take over, he could deprive him of his deity position with one word. It is really not worth mentioning." Sheng Yuanxin tilted her head and said, "But the Jing deity said he is the reincarnation of 9 dragons. How can he not be powerful?" What was the reincarnation of 9 dragons? They had never heard of it. Hey, what reincarnation of 9 dragons? Can he transform into a real dragon? Bu Rui said disapprovingly. Sheng Yuanxin wrinkled her nose. She felt that Bu Rui was belittling Suyu too much, so she looked away. Noticing the change in Sheng Yuanxin's expression, Bu Rui became more and more unconvinced. The reincarnation of 9 dragons? Substitute god? Oh, I'll meet you. In the crane deity's family, Suyu occupied the secret training room of the crane deity. The spiritual energy here was ordinary because the gods did not need spiritual energy. However, the secret room had the breath left by the crane deity who had been practicing for thousands of years. These breaths accumulated day and night, causing all the items in the secret room to be contaminated with the strong breath of the gods. The breath of the gods was a pressure for Suyu. The effect of the pressure was that Suyu could get twice the result with half the effort when he practiced here. The dragon form technique, which still needed half a year to be completed, was finally completed. With a light breath, Suyu's figure turned into a golden dragon shadow for a moment. In addition, Suyu's soul strength had also increased greatly. Vaguely, Suyu touched the edge of the illusionary soul realm. Finally, there was the cultivation. After stabilizing the stage 2 all creations, Suyu tried to make a breakthrough. As a result, he easily reached stage 3 all creations. This was due to the enormous resources of the crane deity's cavern world. At the same time, it was also due to the fact that Suyu had an 8 apertures primordial spirit body. Hence, his cultivation speed was soaring like a rocket. After finishing his training, Suyu entered the 9 Jade spiritual pearl. The space that had once accommodated countless ghosts was now empty, with only a few people left. The tree goddess was teaching Shangge, who was suffering. As soon as she saw Suyu, she wiped her tears and hid behind Suyu with a pitiful look. "Tree goddess, can you be more reserved like a goddess? You bullied her and made her cry again," Suyu said to the tree goddess in front of him. She was still nailed to the throne by the spear condensed from the evil aura. She couldn't move at all, but she could control the throne to carry her and chase after Shangge. The little girl isn't content. Without me, how could she have reached the 6th level of the manifestation realm so quickly? The tree goddess was exceptionally blunt. Speaking of which, if it weren't for the ghost prison's great emperor, Suyu wouldn't have known that Shangge had the rare constitution of the ghost and Buddha union. Although it was not comparable to the constitution of the descendants of the deities, it was valuable because the body could accommodate the 2 opposite powers of the ghost and Buddha. According to the ghost prison's great emperor, this kind of physique would die prematurely at birth, and it was rare to live to this day. When the tree goddess heard that, she volunteered to be Shangge's teacher. She guided her from head to toe, fully displaying her physique. Although he had gone through a lot of hardships, he had gained a lot, almost catching up with Suyu's 8 apertures primordial spirit. He had achieved the cultivation of all creation stage 6 and was only 1 step away from the mortal fairy. With the help of the tree goddess, it would not be difficult for her to become a mortal fairy. "Tree goddess, I came here to try and see whether I can pull out the evil fatal energy halberd. Su Yu comforted Shunge while wearing a stern look on his face. The carefree tree god suddenly looked serious. Have you found a way? Su Yu nodded. It won't be a problem to use my Milky Way star sand. Milky Way star sand? The tree god shook her head slightly. You have tried it. The evil fatal energy is the power of a deity. Although your Milky Way star sand is an Emperor-based saint artifact, it can only exert less than 10% of its power. At most, it can only absorb the mortal fairy's strength. You can't extract the divine power. That was in the past. Su Yu waved his palm, and a large area of Milky Way star sand flew out from his palm. The hazy starlight condensed into a magnificent scene like the Milky Way, which covered the whole valley. The Milky Way star sand turned into a flying white crane, which was the form of the crane deity. The tree god was pleasantly surprised. Did the crane deity successfully integrate into the saint artifact and become a Holy Spirit? Su Yu nodded. Yes, with the help of the Holy Spirit, I can exert 80% to 90% of its power. Let me try again. The tree god nodded hurriedly. She was pleasantly surprised. At Su Yu's instruction, the Milky Way star sand wrapped the halberd on the tree god's body. The Milky Way star sand rotated, and the stubborn evil fatal energy halberd was easily extracted like tofu. An excited look appeared on the tree god's face. As the evil fatal energy receded, the tree god gradually regained the ability to move its body and almost started dancing with joy. So he was also gratified by this. There was a world of difference between an Emperor-based saint artifact and one without an artifact spirit. After a whole month, the halberd, which was condensed by the evil fatal energy, and the evil fatal energy, which had been integrated into the tree god's body for many years, were finally removed. The tree god regained her freedom. Tree god, the halberd has been removed for you. It's time for you to leave, isn't it? Su Yu asked. The tree god jumped down from the throne and said with a smile, her steps as light and graceful as a butterfly, "No way. I still have one thing to do." Su Yu was surprised. What is it? Shouldn't the tree god go to seek revenge on her former enemy? I want to marry you, the tree god said boldly as she stared at Su Yu. I refuse. I'm a goddess, and I'm worth a lot of money. I'm very sad that you refused me so decisively, and it hurt my self-esteem. The look in your eyes tells me that you are up to no good. I didn't. I just heard that after you get married, your property will be shared by the husband and wife. If you divorce, your property can be divided. Anyway, you have so many treasures, so I don't mind sharing half of them with you. Shameless. Being shameless is better than being poor. Stop it. Let's get married and get divorced. Then, let me divide our property. Su Yu was speechless. Su Yu left the 9 jade spiritual pearl as the goddess. Oh, the god of hoodlums continued to pester him endlessly. Anyway, the 9 jade spiritual pearl couldn't trap him, so it didn't matter if she didn't want to leave. Anyway, without his consent, she couldn't take away even a piece of supreme growing soil. Feather God, a distinguished guest, is here. Zhang Yiming's voice came from outside the secret room. As the deputy captain of the law enforcement team in the Crane Deity's Cavern world, he was responsible for exchanging hostages with Su Yu. Su Yu asked, who is it? The descendant of the sword god, Bu Rui, who ranks second in the Sunluo law enforcement team. Zhang Yiming said in awe. For him, Bu Rui was a legendary figure. Now, Zhang Yiming had come to visit Su Yu. Even Bu Rui, who was a fugitive in the past, had come to visit Su Yu. Su Yu said, ask the family master to entertain me. I am in secluded cultivation, so I can't receive guests for the time being. Recently, many forces had come to visit Su Yu, including many famous geniuses of the Great Eastern Alliance. However, Hirushu had been the one to entertain them all. Hirushu was quite grateful for this. Su Yu didn't interfere in the affairs of the family, which was a sign of respect to Hirushu. Yes. Zhang Yiming opened his mouth and said to himself, Su Yu was really different now. Even such a big shot was refused by him. After Hirushu left, Su Yu said, Give me all the information you have collected recently. Focus on the book deity's family. Outside the secret room, many ghostly shadows appeared. When they showed up, they presented a large pile of information that had been prepared. This ghost was a member of the intelligence system established by Suyu. When Suyu had the tokens of the two deities, he had established his own intelligence network secretly. Even the two deities didn't know about this. This was Suyu's own force. It was because of their existence that Suyu was able to find the extreme chilly water in secret, spread the news secretly, create public opinion, and provide irreplaceable help. Now that he had become a substitute deity, this intelligence network had developed more rapidly. Now, it had covered almost half of the East Continent. Of course, the cavern world of the book deity was the focus. After reading the information, Suyu found the information they had collected was very detailed. Who entered and left the book deity's mansion, how many people there were, what they looked like, whether they were men or women, etc. After reading the information, Suyu shook his head slightly. This intelligence network had just been established and was not experienced enough. Those who were responsible for surveillance had missed a lot of information. According to their information, the book deity's family didn't take any action. However, it was suspicious because of this. Suyu didn't believe that the book deity's family wouldn't take any action when he became a substitute deity. However, the intelligence network didn't find anything suspicious. The only explanation was that his intelligence personnel had been deceived. The book deity's family can't remain silent. Suyu thought. However, he didn't know what they were going to do. At this time, Zhang Yiming came back. Feather deity, another distinguished guest wants to see you. Unless it is a deity, you don't need to inform me. Just leave it to Rushu, Suyu said. Zhang Yiming said, Feather deity, this guest said he has information that you want to know. What? Suyu raised his eyebrows. Someone who knew he was collecting information about the book deity's family was much more powerful than him. Among the people Suyu knew, only one person had such an intelligence network and was quite smart. That person was Yang Tai. Suyu didn't want to have a close relationship with this person. The scene where Yang Tai instructed the crane deity's family to chase after him was an obstacle in their way. Chapter 1152. In the reception room of the crane deity's family, Hirushu's expression was calm as he accompanied the two guests. One of them was Burui, who ranked second in the Sanluo law enforcing team, and the other was Yang Tai, who ranked third. To be honest, Hirushu was shocked when he saw the arrival of the two leaders of the Sanluo law enforcing team. He wondered if they were here to cause trouble. He didn't feel relieved until they asked to see Suyu. Hirushu said to Burui, Lord Bu, the feather god is at the critical moment of his cultivation, so it is not suitable for him to see guests. If you have something urgent to say, I can pass on a message for you. Hearing that, Burui was a little stunned. He came here to make trouble for Suyu, but he didn't expect that he couldn't even see Suyu. Hirushu smiled apologetically at Yang Tai. Even Burui couldn't see him, let alone Yang Tai, who was of lower status. Seeing Yang Tai also got the same treatment, Burui said with a faint smile, Brother Yang, I think we'd better go. The threshold of the feather god is too high. We can't see him at all. Yang Tai just smiled and didn't answer. At this moment, Zhang Yiming came over and whispered something to them. Hirushu said with a smile, Envoy Yang, the feather god wants to see you. This was the first time for Suyu to receive a guest. Hirushu couldn't help but pay more attention to him. Yang Tai nodded at Burui and walked into the backyard calmly, leaving Burui behind. It was not that Suyu looked down on them, but he looked down on him. If Burui was rejected alone or together with Yang Tai, Burui would be too lazy to care. However, when Yang Tai was received later, he was refused at the door. Burui's face turned livid, and he was annoyed. Do you really think you are a god? He didn't think highly of Suyu, who was a substitute god. Lord Bu, if you have any message for me, Hirushu said with a smile. Burui flicked his sleeves and left angrily. Tell Suyu, don't fall into my hands. Hirushu just smiled and shook his head as he looked at Burui's back. Alas, another reckless guy. He should really pray that Suyu doesn't fall into his hands. Otherwise, It is obvious who will be the unlucky one. The shrine was the place where the gods received their guests, and it was rarely used. Suyu received Yang Tai in the divine palace in a very formal manner. It was obvious that Suyu valued Yang Tai greatly. Sure enough, when Yang Tai found out that Suyu was meeting him in the divine palace, he knew Suyu's intention and was willing to ease the tension between him and Yang Tai. This trip wasn't a waste. Now, I just need to inform him of this important news. Yang Tai entered the divine palace with a smile. After a short while, Suyu came. "Brother Yang, how have you been?" Suyu smiled and said. Yang Tai bowed. "I wouldn't dare. Brother Su, you're a god now. Your status is still important." Suyu waved his hand. "When I was a mortal, I didn't see you, the descendant of a deity, asking me to greet you. Everything is the same between us, so there's no need to care about etiquette." Upon hearing this, Yang Tai relaxed completely. Since Suyu was willing to let go of the unpleasantness, the two of them had a tacit understanding that they had become friends. It's for your sake." Yang Tai sat down with a smile. Then he said with a serious look, "Brother Su, please forgive me if I have offended you in such a hurry. This matter is really important, so I have to tell you this." Suyu said with a smile, "I'm all ears." Yang Tai took out a file and handed it to Suyu. Then he said, "My intelligence agents have been monitoring the book deity's family. 3 months ago, our people found Wucho, the trusted follower of the book deity's young master, left secretly. Only a few people in the book deity's family knew about this. Therefore, my people have been following Wucho for 3 whole months. Our people found Wucho, went to the world of divine, remains alone." Suyu raised his eyebrows. "The world of divine remains? The area near the realm of demons? Isn't he afraid of being devoured by the demon clan?" Hearing that, Yang Tai said, "Brother Su, you don't know this. The world of divine remains is really close to the realm of demons. However, most of the creatures who have betrayed the other cavern worlds gather there. They have nowhere else to go and can only survive there. However, the realm of demons never invades that place. They deliberately attract the traitors of the other cavern worlds to the realm of demons. Then, these traitors lead the way to invade the other cavern worlds." Hearing that, Suyu's eyes were filled with killing intent. These traitors were the most detestable enemies. Our people have been following him. They found he went to the Netherworld faction in the world of divine remains. Yang Tai said seriously when he mentioned the Netherworld faction, "Brother Su, you may not know this, but the Netherworld faction is an extremely horrible killer organization. Its members are all traitors of the cavern worlds who have been living on the edge of blades. Some of them are stronger than others. The weakest among them is at the mortal fairy realm, while the strongest one is at the prospective deity realm." Hearing that, Suyu was a bit surprised. Prospective deity? Having witnessed Sheng Yuanshin's attack, Suyu knew how horrible a prospective deity was. In addition, there is the death deity, the leader of the Netherworld faction, who rarely fights. A deity? This organization is really huge. According to the information we got, Wucho has assigned a task in the Netherworld faction, which is to kill you. As for the price, he will kill you at any cost." Yang Tai said seriously. Suyu realized the seriousness of this matter. Regardless of the price, the target might be a mortal fairy at the peak, or even a prospective deity. With Suyu's current cultivation, even a mortal fairy at the peak would be in danger, let alone a prospective deity. If he fought with a prospective deity, he would have a slim chance of survival. "Brother Yang, the information you brought to me is really important." Suyu stood up to express his gratitude. This gift was enough for Suyu to forget all his previous grudges. Yang Tai had achieved his goal. So, he said, "Brother Su, if you need any help, just tell me. I can provide 1 or 2 prospective deities in my family." Even the all-access family couldn't have too many prospective deities. Even Yang Tai wasn't qualified to enjoy the protection of a prospective deity. So, he was quite reluctant to say that. "Brother Yang, I appreciate your kindness. However, I have a way to deal with it," Suyu said. Yang Tai heaved a sigh of relief secretly. If Suyu really asked for help, Yang Tai would have to beg his family. The prospective deities of the Netherworld faction were all experienced in life and death battles. The prospective deities, cultivated by his family, with all kinds of resources, were no match for the prospective deities in a one-on-one fight. If one or two of them died, it would be a great loss. Even as a young master, he couldn't bear such a loss. Brother Su, be careful. My people are back, so those killers are probably back too. Brother Su, please be careful. Yang Tai said. Su Yu nodded his head. Then he saw Yang Tai off. When he returned to the Divine Hall, Su Yu's face became serious. Fighting with a prospective deity was one thing, and guarding against a prospective deity was another. Undoubtedly, the latter was dozens of times more difficult. I have to get ready, Su Yu said coldly. Unless the death deity comes, you won't be able to leave this place alive. Now, Su Yu was responsible for the safety of the entire Jojo Cavern world and the Crane deity's cavern world. He couldn't allow any mishap to happen to him. Anyone or anything that could harm him would be destroyed. As he was thinking, Su Yu turned his palm over. The Milky Way star sand turned into the shape of the Crane deity. Where is the evil, fatal energy? The Crane deity said, inside the Milky Way star sand. Of course, the objects refined by the Milky Way star sand wouldn't disappear into thin air. They were just transferred to another place, which was inside the Milky Way star sand. Extract all of them and condense them into a long halberd. In 2 months, no, in 1 month, you must complete it. Yes, with the divine soul of the Crane deity, it wasn't difficult to condense the evil, fatal energy, which contained divine strength, into a long halberd. The next moment, Su Yu turned his palm over and took out a golden arrow. The arrow wasn't as bright as before. It was a bit dim, but it was still emitting a terrifying energy. The celestial destroying arrow was also one of Su Yu's killer weapons. However, it was far from enough. Guarding against a prospective deity was 100 times more dangerous than fighting against a prospective deity. Moreover, the prospective deity was an experienced killer who was good at assassination. With a flash, Su Yu appeared in the 9 Jade spiritual pearl again. Do you regret it? Do you want to marry me now? The tree goddess was teasing Shinga playfully. Su Yu ignored her and said to Shinga, how's the recovery of the chaos multicolored butterfly? Shinga got rid of the tree goddess immediately and said, it has been fully recovered. Because my master put in a lot of divine objects in the Great Eastern Alliance that Jojo doesn't have, it has improved again. When it flaps its wings, it is really powerful. Really? Su Yu was a bit delighted. When Su Yu was a peak mortal fairy, the chaos multicolored butterfly flapped its wings and almost killed Su Yu. Now it had improved a lot. How much more powerful was it? Shinga nodded her head vigorously. Okay, continue to train it. If you need anything, just take it from the supreme growing soil. I will need it in 2 months. Shinga nodded her head hurriedly. Hey, are you in trouble? The tree goddess asked. Su Yu paused a bit and said, yes, there may be a killer of a prospective deity. The tree goddess frowned. A prospective deity is a very vague concept. A prospective deity who has just obtained his celestial energy sphere is a prospective deity. A prospective deity who is only a step away from becoming a deity is also a prospective deity. The gap between different prospective deities is the same as the gap between a mortal fairy and a deity. It is incomparable. Although I have escaped, my celestial energy sphere has been seriously consumed over the years. If it is a prospective deity in the early stage, I should be able to defeat him. If it is a prospective deity in the middle stage, he should be able to kill me. If it is a prospective deity in the late stage, he should be able to kill me. By the way, what kind of prospective deity wants to kill you? Su Yu frowned deeply. This is the problem. The specific strength of a prospective deity, how many there are, where they are now, and when they will attack, are all unknown. Hearing this, the tree goddess also fell into deep thought. You are in a passive situation, so you can only strengthen your defense. However, Su Yu's eyes flashed, and he shook his head in a deep voice. I do need to strengthen my defense, but I want to take the initiative. Those killers are best at taking the initiative. This time, I want them to be in the most disadvantageous situation. Chapter 1153. After leaving the Nine Jade spiritual pearl, Suyu now had the evil fatal halberd, the celestial destroying arrow, the chaos multicolored butterfly, and the tree goddess. The only one who had the confidence to deal with a prospective god was the tree goddess, and it could only be an early-stage prospective god. It's far from enough. Suyu was lost in thought. There were many strong people in the crane deity's cavern. However, for the prospective deities, the number of people was no longer an advantage, but a disadvantage. The assassin could blend into the crowd at any time and sneak over without anyone noticing. As a god, Suyu didn't have many people at his disposal. He could only rely on himself. With a thought, Suyu took out a few purple flames, which were wrapped in lumps of heavenly orchid silver bamboo, liquid drops. There were still 6 more, enough to refine 6 heavenly orchid silver bamboo swords. In the 9 states, apart from the little Kylan, no one could successfully refine a fairy weapon. But in the Great Eastern Alliance, it couldn't be easier. The God of Instruments cavern world was a cavern world created by a god who had become a god through weapon refinement. There were many weapon refinement masters in the cavern world, and it was very easy to ask them to refine a lower-grade immortal weapon. Half a day later, Hirushu came to Suyu. "Feather God, are you leaving?" Suyu nodded. "Yes, I will be back in at least half a month, or at most a month." After giving instructions, Suyu went straight to the God of Instruments cavern world. Even with a divine-level teleportation array, it would take 5 to 6 days to rush to the God of Instruments cavern world. After Suyu left, at the edge of the crane deity's cavern world, a middle-aged woman with a pretty face and an ordinary temperament was walking casually in a busy city. If there was a meticulous person, they would definitely notice that this woman was in the depths of the bustling city, but the people around her ignored her. She was clearly such a beautiful woman, but even if they brushed past her, no one would give her a second glance. It was as if everyone had completely ignored him. In a restaurant on the street, Sheng Yuanxin frowned slightly. A prospective deity should be practicing the way of concealment. Even if she stands in front of others, no one will notice her. I wonder which family has trained her. Sitting across from him was Bu Rui. He faintly glanced at the woman. Sure enough, he clearly knew of the woman's existence, but every time his gaze fell on her, he couldn't help but look away. She tried several times, but she still couldn't see the woman. "Tut, if this person is a killer, he is quite powerful," Bu Rui said casually. Sheng Yuanxin nodded slightly. "Have you found out where Bu Tiei is?" Bu Rui nodded. After he left the crane deity's family, he immediately disappeared. In order to avoid being killed by the crane deity's family, he didn't return to the book deity's cavern world. Instead, he fled to the device deity's cavern world, which is unrelated to him. I think he planned to stay away from the secular world and live in seclusion from then on. Sheng Yuanxin said, "Yes, then let's go to the God of Instruments cavern world to look for him. He is one of the few who came back alive from a mission in the 9 states, so he must know some information about Qinque." "Yuanxin, why do you care so much about Qinque's case?" Bu Rui was confused. This kind of case didn't need the leader of the Sinluo law enforcers to be so concerned. Of course, Sheng Yuanxin didn't dare to tell him how deep the waters of the Jojo mission were. She pretended to be angry and said, "A law enforcement officer was publicly killed. If we don't punish him severely, it will only encourage the bad spirits." Hearing this, Bu Rui said, "Yes, we law enforcement officers are above all living beings, but some people dare to look down on us." He was obviously referring to Suyu. What kind of contempt was this? Suyu didn't even want to meet him? Yes, you're right. Sheng Yuanxin felt guilty. 6 days later, in the cavern world of the God of Instrument, according to the information obtained by Suyu, there were 4 crafting masters in the cavern world of the God of Instrument. Among them, Wang Yinxian, the crafting master from the east, was the most proficient. Except for the God of Instrument, no one could compete with him in forging. The magical artifacts he made were not only of high quality, but also very fast. What Suyu lacked the most was time. Wang Yinxian had a bad habit that many famous crafting masters had. He would never waste time on a magical artifact that was not challenging. However, Wang Yinchuan's bad habit was more serious. He not only wanted the artifact to be challenging, but also exciting. Otherwise, he wouldn't make it no matter how much money he was offered. Such a strange temper made people wonder. Suyu's 6 fairy swords were difficult and easy at the same time. It was very difficult to determine whether they met Wang Yunquan's requirements. The other 3 were much better tempered. As long as they could afford it, they wouldn't refuse anyone. After thinking for a while, Suyu finally went to the mansion of Wang Yunxian. There were many people outside Wang Yunquan's mansion. Suyu was just one of them. He didn't reveal his identity as the Feather God. Instead, he waited quietly in the line to be received by Wang Yunxian. My master has ordered that only middle-grade magical artifacts and above will be made today. When Wang Yunxian was about to receive the guests, a boy opened the door of the mansion and said loudly. Hearing this, almost everyone walked away. Is this a joke? How could middle-grade magical artifacts be made so easily? It would cost more than 10 times more financial and material resources than low-grade magical artifacts. They weren't surprised because Wang Yunxian was like this all year round. Occasionally, when he was in a good mood, he would ask the boy to give them an unacceptable condition to drive them away. After a while, the door of the mansion was deserted. Seeing that there was still one person outside the mansion, the boy asked, Are you going to make middle-grade magical artifacts? Suyu shook his head. Only 6 low-grade magical artifacts. Hearing that, the boy shook his head. Please go back. My master is in a bad mood. He doesn't want to make magical artifacts today. Suyu said with a smile. If it were me, Master Wang would still be willing to see me. Please pass the message to him. The bald boy said with a bitter face, Alas, don't worry. Recently, my master hasn't received any interesting crafting tasks. He's in a bad mood. If you're not afraid of ruining the materials of the magical artifacts, I won't stop you. Ha! If your master knows it's me, he might be in a good mood. Seeing that Suyu was so reckless, the boy said, May I ask who you are? Suyu, well, you can also call me the Feather God. The boy was surprised. Are you the Feather God? What do you think? Your master will be interested in my arrival, Suyu said. However, the boy's face darkened. I advise you to leave now. My master has been scolding you the most these days. Suyu was stunned. Scolding me? Forget it. Just tell him that if he doesn't invite me in, I will find someone else. The boy had no choice but to report to Suyu. Wang Yunxian was in his 50s. His cultivation was average. Unlike ordinary crafting masters, he was handsome and dignified. Hearing the boy's report, Wang Yunxian stood up abruptly. Then, he patted the table and said angrily with red eyes, That bastard! How dare he come to me? Usurping the position of a deity is such an interesting thing. Why didn't he ask me to do it? The boy opened his mouth widely. My God! It turns out that my master didn't ask Suyu to participate in such an exciting thing as usurping the position of a deity. Speaking of which, there was a rumor circulating in the market that Suyu's deity position was instigated. The news was groundless, but some people believed it. After all, Suyu became the agent of the crane deity's cavern world, which was really strange. So, should I drive him away? Wait, what is he going to craft? Fairy artifacts. 6 low-grade fairy artifacts. Boring stuff. I am not interested. Wang Yunxian waved his hand impatiently. The boy sighed and said to himself, I should have told you earlier. What else did he say? The boy said, He also said that if I don't invite him in, I will invite someone else. Hearing that, Wang Yunxian rolled his eyes and said, Let him in. The boy was confused. What does his eccentric master want to do? After a while, Suyu saw Wang Yunxian in the yard. Master Wang, the divine bone worship you made is quite durable, Suyu said with a smile as soon as he entered the yard. In order to escape, Wang Yunxian had built 3 ships and 2 small divine bone ships. Then, he hired 2 black market craftsmen to make the warship. As for the giant warship, it was also hired by black market craftsmen. However, no one knew that the person who had refined the warship was none other than Wang Yunxian. Nobody expected the famous Wang Yunxian would work in the black market. Moreover, he heard that Suyu had hired black market craftsmen to build the warship, so he volunteered to help Suyu. As for the reason, How exciting would it be if he could help a terrifying kidnapper escape successfully? No fairy artifacts. Wang Yinxian said immediately when he saw Su Yu. Su Yu said with a smile, even a fairy artifact that can kill prospective deities? Kill prospective deities? Wang Yunxuan's angry face was filled with surprise. Then, his eyes lit up. Prospective deities? Which family's prospective deities are they from? The Netherworld faction, Su Yu said calmly. Hearing that, Wang Yunxian was not afraid. Instead, he patted his thigh and said excitedly, a prospective deity from the Netherworld faction. This is more exciting than killing a prospective deity from a deity family. The prospective deities of the Netherworld faction are more cunning and difficult to deal with. This is the most exciting way to kill them. I knew it. You didn't come to me for nothing. Wang Yunxuan's face was filled with joy, which the boy hadn't seen for a long time. Then, he patted Su Yu's shoulder and said, okay, I will help you. However, can you kill a prospective deity with only 6 low-grade fairy artifacts? Don't fool me. Su Yu said with a faint smile, 6 may not work, but what about 9? Still not enough. Wang Yinxian was quite clear about the power of a prospective deity. What about 9? Su Yu said with a faint smile. 9? Wang Yinxian was lost in thought. 9? Are you going to set up a sword formation? If it is a superior sword formation, it is not impossible, but it is still very difficult. Su Yu agreed with him. He didn't think a complete version of the 9-sun sword formation could kill a prospective deity. If it was so easy, a prospective deity would be too worthless and would have been killed long ago. However, Wang Yunxuan's eyes were filled with excitement. However, this is the only way to challenge it. 9 low-grade fairy artifacts may not be enough, but a middle-grade fairy artifact. Heh. Su Yu raised his eyebrows. These materials are only enough to craft a low-grade fairy artifact, right? Wang Yunxian said excitedly. That's why it is interesting. You can make the impossible possible. This is the only way to challenge it. Let me take a look at the 3 swords on your back. Su Yu gave him the 3 heavenly orchid silver bamboo swords. After a glance, Wang Yunxuan's pupils constricted and he exclaimed in surprise, good swords. The one who crafted these swords must be a divine-level crafting master. He is no worse than my master. Is the little Kylan so powerful? Where did the crafting skills inherited in its mind come from? Could it be the god of instrument? It's a pity that the flame was not pure enough, and the crafting time was too long. That's why the grade of the swords couldn't be improved. Forget it. I will offend this divine-level crafting master and reforge these 3 swords. Wang Yinxian started crafting with the 3 swords and materials in his arms. Su Yu watched patiently from the side. There were many procedures to craft a fairy artifact. Wang Yinxian summoned a group of people and taught them some simple procedures. Su Yu glanced at the group of people and stared at one of them in surprise. That person was also staring at Su Yu in surprise. However, Su Yu withdrew his gaze and pretended he didn't know him. He escaped from the family of the crane deity here because he wanted to live a secluded life and didn't want to be disturbed. At this moment, the bald doorman hurried over with sweat all over his face. Master, the captain of the Sunluo law enforcing team, Sheng Yuanxin and Bu Rui, are here to visit you. Few people would like to be visited by the Sunluo law enforcing team. After all, they had the power to kill all creatures except the descendants of deities. Wang Yinxian was a bit displeased. However, he couldn't refuse the visit of the Sunluo law enforcing team. Hearing that, Bu Tie's face darkened. When the doorman was about to leave, Su Yu said, no need. Just tell them the feather deity is here, and Master Wang has no time to receive guests. The doorman's eyes almost popped out. How dare he refuse the Sunluo law enforcing team? However, after thinking about it carefully, he realized Su Yu was just a substitute deity. Who could stop him if he violated his own rules? Wang Yinxian said with a smile, how domineering. I like it. Bu Tie let out a sigh of relief and looked at Su Yu gratefully. Outside the door, the 2 Sunluo law enforcing team members had totally different attitudes. Sheng Yuanxin was stunned. How could I meet that guy here? However, Burui said angrily with a dark face, "How dare you? He expelled me in the family of the crane deity. How dare he expel me in Wang Yuxuan's mansion? Does he really think he is the reincarnation of 9 dragons?" Chapter 1154. As soon as he stepped in, he was blocked by a faint divine power. "Yuanxin, are you going to stop me?" Burui said angrily. Sheng Yuanxin said, "After all, he is a deity. If you offend him and get killed by him, the sword god will have nothing to say. Do you understand?" It would have been fine if he didn't say that. Burui laughed angrily and said, "You are just an all creation's fake god. You think you can kill me?" "Burui, I should take you back to the Sanluo law enforcing team for questioning because of the fake deity's words. The crane deity's legacy runs through the cavern world, which is absolutely true. He is the proxy, not the fake deity. If you continue to talk nonsense, I can't turn a blind eye to the crime of slandering the deity." Sheng Yuanxin said lightly. She didn't like Burui's aggressive character. Compared with Su Yu, Burui was on the other end of the spectrum. Sheng Yuanxin thought of Su Yu's low-key, steady, calm, and far-sighted ability to devise strategies to win a battle from 1,000 miles away. Burui stepped back. He knew Sheng Yuanxin's character. She looked weak, but was very principled. If he insisted on it, Sheng Yuanxin would enforce the law impartially. "Humph." Burui stepped back, full of resentment. Sheng Yuanxin said seriously, "Slandering, attacking, and slandering a deity are all felonies. As a Sanluo law enforcing team, I hope you will remember this." The more she behaved like this, the more indignant Burui was. Why did a mere all-creations kid from a humble family have to ride on his head? In terms of identity, he was the descendant of the sword god, and his father was one of the 9 top deities. In terms of strength, he ranked second among the descendants of deities, second only to Sheng Yuanxin, who was a peak mortal fairy. In terms of strength, he was thousands of times stronger than Su Yu. Why should he be inferior to Su Yu? He couldn't swallow his anger. Seeing Burui going to the extreme, Sheng Yuanxin sighed silently. It was better to give in and accept the setback. As a descendant, you can't take the initiative to attack a deity. However, as one of the 9 law enforcing team of the Alliance Hall, you have a privilege, Sheng Yuanxin said slowly. Burui, who was angry, suddenly thought of something. The top 3 law enforcers of the Sanluo law enforcers would get the position of law enforcer of the Alliance Hall. Although it was just an empty position and they didn't manage the affairs of the Alliance Hall, they had real power. One of the rights to go unnoticed by others was to gain the right to challenge any god once every 3 years. This was a rule set by the 100 deities when they formed the alliance. Whoever received a challenge, unless they were traveling outside, could not refuse it. It was just that it was ridiculous to challenge a god. Even a prospective god would not think that challenging a god would bring them any benefits. After all, the gap between the 2 sides was too great. If he lost the battle at the very beginning, how could he gain anything from it? Therefore, this privilege was almost ignored by the law enforcers. After being reminded by Sheng Yuanxin, he suddenly thought of something and couldn't help but sneer. Challenge a deity? I, Burui, will be the first person in history. With that, Burui showed an excited look. Challenging a deity was something that had never happened before. When the time came, many deities would descend to watch. If he defeated a deity in front of the deities and won their praise, Burui felt excited just thinking about it. Looking at his fantasizing expression, Sheng Yuanxin sighed slightly. I hope that guy will show mercy and not embarrass him too much. In the mansion, the fairy weapon was being refined in an orderly manner. In order to forcibly refine the materials of a low-grade fairy weapon into a middle-grade fairy weapon, Wang Yunxian could be said to have spent a lot of money. Not only did he integrate many precious materials, but also some extinct materials that couldn't be bought on the market. But these were not enough. The heavenly orchid silver bamboo sword was the main material, and the material itself had already determined that the grade of the magic weapon refined was limited. No matter how high Wang Yunxuan's refining level was, he couldn't reverse the law of nature. However, It was precisely because of the challenge that Wang Yinxian became more and more excited. In the end, he sacrificed his blood of the descendants of a deity, the bloodline of the instrument god. As a descendant of the instrument god, his bloodline contained magical effects that could improve the grade of materials. However, the bloodline of the descendants of a deity would be less and less. The fainter the purity of the bloodline, the lower the possibility of inheriting the position of the instrument god. Wang Yinxian didn't care about it at all. He just kept vomiting the divine blood, which made Su Yu's heart palpitate. Equipment refining was a physical work for others, but equipment refining was a life-threatening job for him. 9 middle-grade fairy weapons. Even for a top equipment forging grandmaster like Wang Yinxian, it still took him a long time to refine them. After 15 days, the refining process was finally completed. From the bone-chilling ice well water, Wang Yinxian took out the solid 9 swords. They still looked like the swords in a 9-sun sword formation. They didn't change at will. What was slightly different was that there was a faint trace of red on the edge of the sword, which looked like a trace of blood that hadn't dried up for a long time after killing someone. The holy and beautiful heavenly orchid silver bamboo sword in the past was a little bit more solemn now. When he touched the handle of the sword, Su Yu heard a heartbeat coming from the silver sword, as if the heavenly orchid silver bamboo sword had come to life. Middle-grade fairy weapons already have spirituality. If a soul is willing to be integrated into the body of the sword, it will become a weapon spirit. The grade of the heavenly orchid silver bamboo sword can be improved to a higher level and reach the power of a top-grade fairy weapon. If a soul was willing to become a weapon spirit, it would at least be a top-grade fairy weapon. The soul of an ordinary person would never be willing to do that. However, even a middle-grade fairy weapon was enough for Su Yu. When it was a low-grade fairy weapon, the 3-sun sword formation could kill a stage 2 mortal fairy. When it was a middle-grade fairy weapon, it was really unknown how powerful the 9-sun sword formation could be. This is interesting. I'm afraid the prospective deity of the Netherworld faction is going to suffer a loss. Wang Yinchuan's eyes were full of expectation. The prospective deity of the Netherworld faction is not the kind of trash that the Great Eastern Alliance fed. I can't guarantee that you can kill him with this sword formation. Su Yu smiled. If I can kill him in this way, I have underestimated the Netherworld faction. As the gathering place of traders in the cavern world, the world of divine remains must be a chaotic and dark place without rules. It was imaginable how difficult it was to become a prospective deity in that place. This is challenging. Wang Yunxian was full of excitement and expectation. He waved his sleeves and said to the bald boy, "Tomorrow, tell the guest that I am out for some business and can't accept crafting for the time being." The bald boy asked, "Where are you going?" "To continue crafting, of course. I want to craft a large set of weapons that can kill prospective deities." What could be more interesting than that? Wang Yinxian volunteered to take the initiative, regardless of whether Su Yu agreed or not. Su Yu, of course, nodded and agreed. The crafting materials will be provided by the crane deity's family. As for the manpower, I will add a few helpers. Wang Yunhe pointed at a few people behind him, but Bu Qiei was not among them. Su Yu paused for a moment and said, "Take that guy away, too." Wang Yinxian glanced at him. "He is a newbie, but he is quite efficient." "Right, take him away, too." Bu Qiei was deeply grateful. The Sanluo law enforcing envoys were outside, and they were probably coming for him. Su Yu was willing to take him away because he wanted to protect him. "Wait a moment. I will inform my father. That old guy loves me like a woman. If I don't inform him, I am afraid he will come to the crane deity's family," Wang Yunxian said. Su Yu nodded. After Wang Yunxian left, they came to a quiet place. Bu Qiei understood tacitly. He went forward and knelt down to pay his respect. "Thank you, Feather God. No need. Besides, you don't need to be too afraid of the Sanluo law enforcing envoys. I will plead for you," Su Yu said calmly. "Tell me, what do you know about Qin Kuo?" Bu Qiei said. "Before we set off, Qin Kuo was instructed by the young master, Qin Feichen. I don't know the details." Su Yu squinted his eyes. "Qin Feichen? Right. Is Qin Kuo close to him?" "Yes, Qin Kwa is from the book deities family. He has been following Qin Feichen since he was young and is his confidant. He is more trusted than me. Suyu pondered for a moment, then said, "So, why did you go to Jiuzhou to carry out the mission?" Buqie hesitated for a moment, then said, "We received a notice that a remnant soul of a demon god was causing trouble in the galaxy. We chased it all the way and forced it into the cavern world of Jiuzhou." This reason was truly flawless. It was clear that he entered the Jiuzhou cavern world under the pretext of chasing the demonic god of withered bones and rescued the central prefecture's king when he was in trouble. "Where is the demonic god of withered bones? Who passed this mission to you?" Suyu asked. Buqie was taken aback. "The demonic god of withered bones is in the Alliance Hall. The one relaying the mission is a prospective deity, Law Enforcer Liuli. Law Enforcer Liuli was not like Sheng Yuanxin, Bu Rui, or Yang Tai, who only cared about prolonging their lives. Instead, he was a supreme being who held real power and commanded all law enforcers in the world. Apart from the Sunluo law enforcers, they had the highest status under the gods. As expected, the enemy was within. The demonic god of withered bones and law enforcer Liuli must be insiders. Let's go." Wang Yinxian urged Suyu angrily. Looking at his weird expression, Suyu couldn't help but think of the image of the god of instrument. How could he torture Wang Yinxian like this? They left the house together. Outside the yard, Sheng Yuanxin and Bu Rui had been waiting quietly for a month. Sheng Yuanxin smiled calmly. "Feather god." Bu Rui snorted disdainfully. "We are here for Buqie. Where's the Sunluo law enforcers investigating the case? Please hand him over as soon as possible." Suyu pretended he didn't see him and said, "Miss Yuanxin, let's talk in private." Sheng Yuanxin nodded and had a secret conversation with Suyu for a while. Sheng Yuanxin's face changed several times. Then she said, "The demonic god of withered bones is in the Sunluo Law Enforcers Hall and is being protected temporarily. However, Law Enforcer Liuli has a high status. We can't catch him without solid evidence. So we can only find the demonic god of withered bones. I will go back to interrogate him now." When they separated, Sheng Yuanxin said, "Let's go." Bu Rui said, "Don't you want to take Buqie back?" "No need. Suyu has told me what Buqie knows. There is no need to ask further," Sheng Yuanxin said. Bu Rui was surprised. Sheng Yuanxin trusted Suyu so much. He couldn't believe they trusted each other so much. He didn't know Sheng Yuanxin and Suyu had a common secret. They had the same interests in this matter, so they could naturally trust each other. Seeing Sheng Yuanxin ignored him, Bu Rui was jealous. They had been together for many years, but Sheng Yuanxin didn't trust him so much. How many times had Suyu met Sheng Yuanxin? He couldn't suppress the anger in his heart anymore. Chapter 1155. I refuse. Why? Are you afraid? Coward. Well, I am afraid that if I beat the young one, the old one will come. Puffed. Sheng Yuanxin, who was walking in front, couldn't help but laugh. She quickly covered her mouth and blushed. She thought to herself, this guy is really merciless. It seems that Bu Rui won't be able to defeat him. Bu Rui's face was livid. As a descendant of the sword god, if he was injured, the sword god would most likely help him. Don't worry, I took the initiative to challenge the gods. As long as you don't kill me, no one can blame you. Even my father. Sheng Yuanxin also turned around and said helplessly, the law enforcement officer has the right to challenge the gods once. This is the covenant made by the gods. Since you have become an acting god, you still have to bear the corresponding obligations. Suyu nodded. Okay, I will give some advice to the younger generation, nephew Rui. Puff. Sheng Yuanxin also laughed, but she couldn't help but stare at Suyu. As a god, Suyu and the 100 gods were of the same generation, so it was not inappropriate to call Bu Rui, a descendant of the gods, nephew. However, Sheng Yuanxin was also a descendant of the gods, which was one generation lower than Suyu. Does it mean that I have to accept him calling me niece? This guy. Sheng Yuanxin was angry and amused at the same time. Hearing this, Bu Rui's face turned livid. However, he was indeed a god, so he couldn't refute it. He gritted his teeth and said, "Don't be complacent. Half a month later, in front of the crane deity's family, I will challenge you. Don't beg for mercy." "No problem, but the time has been slightly changed. It will be said in a month." Suyu smiled lightly. Urui was confused. Why did he change it to a month later? A month later, it was the time for the Carnival of All Gods. However, if it didn't affect the challenge, he didn't care about half a month. Okay, a month later, the day before the Carnival of All Gods, you and I will fight. It was only then that Suyu nodded and accepted the challenge. When Suyu and Wang Yinxian returned to the crane deity's family, it was already 6 days later. Hirushu hurriedly led his people to welcome Suyu. On the day that Suyu left, they were really worried that Suyu would leave the mess of the crane deity's family. "Welcome back, Feather God." Suyu didn't have much time left, so he waved his hand and said, "You don't have to be so courteous. Just make arrangements for these people." Hirushu looked up and saw a person standing side by side with Suyu. At first glance, he looked familiar, but he didn't know who it was. He was furious. Who was so arrogant as to stand side by side with the Feather God? Fortunately, an old man of the crane deity's family hurriedly whispered this person's identity to Hirushu. Hearing this, Hirushu's eyes flickered. Wang Yinxian? The heir most valued by the god of instrument? Even if Hirushu didn't know him personally, he should have heard of him. Not only did he have a high level of craftsmanship, but he also had a strange temper. More importantly, he was loved by the god of instrument the most, far more than his other brothers and sisters. It could be said that he was the next generation god of instrument. How could he not be happy that his feather god had brought back a candidate for the god of arms after leaving for a month? All these could indirectly help the crane deity's family. "So it's Grandmaster Wang. Please come in quickly." Hirushu did not dare to be negligent. Wang Yinxian waved his hand and said, "There's no need to rest. I'll just leave the spacious, large secret chamber. I'm going to start forging soon." Ah, Hirushu was surprised. He didn't know what Wang Yinxian meant. He thought to himself, could it be that the feather god invited him back? Soon, Wang Yinxian made the arrangements. Wang Yinxian was very mysterious about what kind of magic weapon he wanted to forge to deal with the prospective deity. He only knew that the design of this item was obtained from the relics of the deities, which had long been lost in the world. It took him 7 or 8 years to forge that magic weapon. The main body had been completed. Now, only some parts were needed to be completed. In order to kill the prospective deity of the Netherworld faction, Wang Yuxuan really put in a lot of effort. Of course, in order to cooperate with him, Suyu also agreed that the consumption of those parts would be borne by the crane deity's family. After making arrangements for him, Suyu asked, "How's the thing I asked you to do?" Hirushu said, "Feather God, we have sent people to guard the black market according to the Feather God's words to collect the information you want. Assassins in the dark were indeed a big advantage. They could assassinate Suyu at any time. However, they had a great weakness, information. As an outsider, he was unfamiliar with the people and the place. If he wanted to know the specific situation of Suyu, he could only inquire in the street. Without reliable and effective information, it would be extremely difficult to kill Suyu, and to inquire about reliable, timely, and accurate information. Only the black market that specialized in selling information was the most reliable. Therefore, if the assassins of the Netherworld faction wanted to know specific information about Suyu, they could only go to the black market to buy information about Suyu. Suyu took the information presented by Hirushu and briefly flipped through it. There were details about Suyu in the past month, especially the creatures who had information about Suyu's whereabouts. "Well done," Suyu said. After returning to the secret room, he said, "Submit your investigation as well." Yes. A ghostly fog filled the air, and the intelligence personnel belonging to Suyu, like a ghost, presented another piece of information. The content was the same. They were all detailed investigations of the creatures who had recently inquired about Suyu's information. However, in contrast, the information presented by Suyu's intelligence personnel was much more comprehensive. The crane deity's family really lags behind in terms of intelligence. Not to mention, compared with the all-access family, even Su Yu's newly established intelligence system was far inferior. Putting down the intelligence of the crane deity's family, Su Yu focused on analyzing the content of his own intelligence system. A day later, Su Yu sorted out the fragmented information and said thoughtfully, "Because of the sudden emergence of a new force, I became famous too quickly. There are many creatures who inquired about my news, but very few of them even wanted to inquire about where I went." Su Yu's finger pointed on a list. The above was a list of people who had inquired about Su Yu's whereabouts in the past month. There were as many as 100 people. Among the 100 people, there were no outsiders. They were all locals of the Great Eastern Alliance, belonging to different forces. Su Yu was not disappointed, or was expected. If Su Yu was a killer, for the sake of prudence, he would never take the initiative to collect information. He only needed to spend a little money to let the locals of the Great Eastern Alliance collect information for him. In the list of 100 people, Su Yu circled 10 more people. The 10 of them were the most famous second-hand dealers in the black market. They knew the black market very well. They were very clear about where there was information to sell, and they were very willing to help customers collect information as long as they paid a lot of money. Among the 10 people, Su Yu circled 3 more people. The 3 people investigated Su Yu's whereabouts most frequently in the past month. They inquired about Su Yu's whereabouts in detail almost every day. Contact the intelligence personnel over there and confirm the current status of the 3 people. Su Yu took out the paper and handed it to Gue Ing in front of him. 2 days later, Su Yu received news that 2 of the 3 people had been missing for 7 days and 14 days respectively. Now only one person was still active and frequently investigated Su Yu's information. Is there only one named Zhuang Lin? It seems that the other 2 intelligence personnel were killed by you one after another. You are really cautious. I am afraid it will not take long for this one to be killed by you, right? Su Yu's eyes flashed with deep light. Order the intelligence personnel to capture this person alive and torture him to find out how many people he has been in contact with recently. What are their appearances and what are their cultivation levels? Torture them all clearly. Yes, but soon the intelligence personnel reported back that Zhuang Lin was missing and the intelligence personnel had lost his trace. Feather God, do you continue to investigate his whereabouts? Perhaps he noticed the tracking of the intelligence personnel and fled vigilantly, Gue Ing said. Su Yu shook his head. Zhuang Lin can detect the investigation of the intelligence personnel, and I am afraid those killers have also felt it. There is no need to waste energy to find him. Zhuang Lin is dead, and my purpose has been achieved. Although this time, the killers realized that they had been exposed, they would not dare to continue to inquire about the information in the black market. If he was right, these killers had collected enough information and were on the way to the crane deity's cavern world. In a certain black market, the corpse of Zhuang Lin, who had quite a reputation as an informant, was lying in an ice-cold secret chamber. Beside him were 2 other rotting corpses. Impressively, they were informants who had quite a reputation as well. The secret room was dark, and no one knew how many people were in it. He's being watched. It seems that he's been probing too often and has attracted the attention of someone with ulterior motives. Fortunately, we noticed it and killed Zhuang Lin. Otherwise, we would have been exposed. I just don't know who is watching him. A calm and powerful male voice came from the darkness. In the shadow, a soft female voice came. Oh, no matter who is targeting Zhuang Lin, the inquiry of the black market is ended here, and we should take action. The man said, well, based on the information we have collected, we can make an overall evaluation of the prey this time. In terms of strength, his last fight was with the 3 youths of the bamboo garden, who were at the peak of the Dust Fairy, and his comprehensive strength was at the 2nd stage of the Dust Fairy. In terms of defense, after he became the Feather God, there were often guards at the peak of the Dust Fairy around him. For you and me, they are useless. In terms of help, his foundation in the Great Eastern Alliance is shallow. Except for maintaining a special relationship with the Jing deity, he has no close, strong friends. In summary, the difficulty of hunting this prey is level 2. The Netherworld faction was cautious and very rigorous. Before carrying out the task, they would make a comprehensive evaluation of the prey to determine the difficulty of the task. The difficulty was divided into 9 levels, and the first level was the easiest level, which could be completed without any effort, and the second level required a lot of effort. Suyu had the title of god, but in fact it was easier than killing the descendants of the gods. I suggest to upgrade to level 4. In the darkness, the gentle woman said. The man was slightly surprised. Level 4? You want to upgrade the difficulty of him to the early stage of prospective deity? Yes. The woman was very sure. There are 2 things about him that we have to pay attention to. Chapter 11:56. Second, he brought Wang Yunxian back from the Tool God's cave world. We don't know what he's up to. He secretly stayed in Wang Yunxuan's mansion for 15 days. To sum up these 2 points, Suyu has a hidden part. So my suggestion is to increase the difficulty by 2 levels and list him as a prospective deity to hunt. The man pondered for a moment and said, Fine, then we'll list it as the 4th level of difficulty prey. If it's only at the 4th level, you and I will have to use more than half of our strength. The woman said, The employer's bounty this time is very generous, so we can't be too cautious. Let's go to the crane deity's family. However, as soon as they arrived at the crane deity's family, they received news about Suyu. He went to the Jing deity's cavern world. Standing outside the crane deity's family, the 2 killers were lost in thought. What a coincidence! Just as they were about to make a move, Suyu went to the Jing deity's cavern world. Could it be that he was exposed? Fortunately, Suyu had a good reason to go to the Jing deity's cavern world. The son of the sword god, Burui, challenged the proxy god, the feather god. At that time, there would be many gods who would come to watch. After all, the sword god was one of the top 9 powerful deities. Since his son was challenging a deity, as a father, he would naturally rush over to support him. Most of the deities who were on good terms with the sword god would come to support and cheer for the son of the sword god on account of the sword god. As the challenge party, if they couldn't invite a few gods to support them, they would definitely lose face. After understanding this, the 2 assassins reconsidered their plan. It's easy to kill Suyu in the crane deity's cavern world, but in the Jing deity's world, I'm afraid I'll be exposed easily. As prospective gods, once we step into the Jing deity's cavern world, the Jing deity will definitely sense our aura. Killing Suyu is as difficult as ascending to heaven. The man said. After a pause, the man said, We can only kill him in the crane deity's cavern world. The deities will sense our presence in any other cavern world, so it's not a good idea to kill him. Only when there are no deities in the crane deity's cavern world can we take action. The gentle woman didn't say anything. She gently frowned. This feeling of passively waiting made her instinctively feel uneasy. Could it be that he did it on purpose? A thought appeared in the woman's mind, but she quickly denied it. It was indeed a coincidence. Helpless, they had no choice but to hide and wait passively for an opportunity. This wait lasted for an entire month. In the secret chamber, the 2 assassins' faces were gloomy. Something doesn't seem right. He left for a month without returning. There is something strange about this. The man said. The woman nodded deeply. Yes. Burui challenged him. Soon, a deity will appear in the crane deity's cavern world. Our existence will definitely be noticed by the deities. If we act rashly, we will die here. So, before the competition ends, we still have to bide our time. As she spoke, the woman felt more and more passive. She was more worried about something else. Moreover, the day after the challenge, the Carnival of All Gods will be held. At that time, Suyu will go to the altar of the Great Eastern Alliance to worship the fallen deities. Most likely, he will travel with the Jing deity, and we will lose our chance to strike again. The man also felt very passive. He said, Do we need to wait until after the sacrificial god? The duration of the Carnival of All Gods could be as long as half a year, or as long as 10 years. Our employer only gave us half a year. It took us 3 months to get here and 2 months to gather information. We only have 1 month left. We don't have time to wait for him to come back from the carnival of all gods. The woman said slowly, so we only have one chance to strike. The man's eyes flashed. The day after the challenge ends. The woman nodded. Yes, after the challenge ends, the deities will leave, and Suyu will have no time to go to other cavern worlds. So, when the deities leave, it will be our time to strike. After thinking for a moment, the man said, that's the only way. However, the woman frowned deeply. Don't you think that our assassination seems to be calculated step by step? First, we are forced to withdraw from the black market, unable to continue to inquire about useful information. Then, we are forced to wait for Suyu to come back. As a result, we missed the opportunity to assassinate because the challenge came. Finally, after the challenge, the carnival of all gods will be held, forcing us to lose all opportunities to assassinate, leaving only the gap between the challenge and the carnival of all gods. Intuition tells me that the only opportunity to strike was deliberately left for us. The woman looked dignified. We are in a passive position, and he has the initiative. After listening to the woman's analysis, the man also agreed and said in a deep voice, however, we have no choice. If we don't seize this opportunity, we can only announce that we have to give up this mission. The Netherworld faction has never failed to carry out a mission. If we fail, when you and I go back, the punishment waiting for us will be even more terrible. The woman looked deeply uneasy. This is what I'm worried about. We have to strike. The two killers clearly noticed that Suyu had set a trap, but under Suyu's deliberate arrangement, they fell into a passive position from being the mastermind behind the scenes. Even though they knew it was a trap ahead, they had to jump in. Don't worry too much. Without the deities and prospective deities, what can he do to us, even if he is well prepared? The man comforted. The woman sighed. I hope so. However, I always feel that the power of this person's layout and calculation is frightening. As a prospective deity and a cold-blooded killer, she said this. Suyu stayed in the Jing deity's cavern world for a whole month. Although the Jing deity was surprised, he did not expel Suyu and allowed him to practice in the Jing deity's cavern world. For this, he also gave a lot of extra resources. With the help of these resources, Suyu broke through again and reached the stage for all creation's realm. It was not until the day of the challenge that it was confirmed that there were deities in the Crane deity's cavern world that he returned to the Crane deity's cavern world with the Jing deity. Outside the mansion of the Crane deity's family, it was empty and deserted. However, at the top of the cavern world, where the line of sight could not penetrate, stood 8 or 9 figures with divine light scattered in all directions. Each of them exuded divine power that was worshipped by all living beings, and their faces were hidden in the divine light, not exposed at all. One of the majestic deities with a long sword on his back looked down indifferently. The other 8 or 9 deities stood scattered around him, waiting for the challenge to begin. Suddenly, the Jing deity and Suyu arrived together. Suyu did not enter the top of the world, but appeared directly in the desolate open field, standing with his hands behind his back, waiting for Burui to appear. As the deities witnessed, he and Burui fought. However, Suyu was completely relaxed, with a faint smile on his face, and slowly looked around. Wait, when the deities leave, it will be the time for the Netherworld faction to strike, right? I have prepared a big gift for you, so enjoy it. Even at this moment, Suyu did not take the challenge in front of him seriously. Chapter 1157. Below the peak of the world, amidst the clouds, there were many descendants of deities who had come to watch the battle. There were dozens of them. Not all of them came to support Burui. The majority of them were neutral. In the eyes of the neutral, the outcome of this battle was not difficult to predict. As the strongest peak mortal fairy among the descendants of the deities, Suyu, who had an undeserved reputation, was hardly a match for him. Only Sheng Yuanxin and Yang Tai believed that Suyu was not as simple as he seemed. In the crowd, Burui held his sword in his arms and sneered at Suyu, who was waiting for him. Brother Bu, is it time to go down and fight? The feather god has been waiting for a long time, a neutral god descendant said. Burui smiled and said, what's the hurry? So what if he waited a little longer? Otherwise, if I make a move and he ends up in a sorry state, wouldn't that be a slap to his face? Many descendants of the deities secretly shook their heads. Leaving Suyu out in the open in front of so many people was even more humiliating. Looking at the cold smile on Burui's face, many descendants of the deities sympathized with Suyu. It was really hard on him. Seeing that Burui was ready to continue to ignore him, Suyu said lightly, "Nephew Rui, you have made me wait for you for so long. Is this the attitude you should have towards your elders? You don't even know basic etiquette. Could it be that the sword god never taught you how to be a person?" As soon as these words came out, the descendants of the deities were in an uproar. "Dear nephew," many descendants of neutral gods looked at Burui, whose face turned stiff, red, and then blue, and couldn't help but secretly laugh. Sheng Yuanxin glared at Suyu angrily and said, "This guy is really reckless. He even brought Sword God in to scold him. If the son was ill-mannered, then of course it was the father who did not teach him well. Usually, Burui was used to being arrogant, so what if he was domineering? Who dared to say a word?" Suyu was the only one who spoke bluntly. At the peak of the world, Sword God's face was calm. He said indifferently, "Rui, don't wait anymore." In the clouds, Burui tightly pursed his lips and gritted his teeth, saying hatefully, "Yes, father." Shua. With a leap, he floated in front of Suyu like a phantom. He drew his sword and shouted, "Suyu, let's begin." "All right, my dear nephew, please make your move." "I'll give you some pointers," Suyu said calmly. Burui, who was arrogant in his heart, was infuriated to the extreme. "Watch my sword." Undying sword body. Whoosh. A large number of swords crisscrossed, stabbing straight at Suyu's main body from every corner. Suyu revealed a praising smile. Not bad, the second stage of the sword path, the undying sword body. Compared with Jian Wuxing's sword principle, Burui's power was undoubtedly more powerful with the help of the cultivation of the peak mortal fairy. However, in terms of perfection and subtlety, it was inferior to Jian Wuxing. The cavern world of the 9 prefectures had been suppressed by the central prefecture's king for a long time. She had been cultivating under pressure all the time. Jian Wuxing's undying sword body had been constantly pursuing precision and limits. On the other hand, even if Burui had the guidance of the sword god, he could achieve great success in swordsmanship, but to reach perfection, he could only rely on his own perseverance. Burui was impetuous and arrogant, so he might not be able to study his own shortcomings. Therefore, Suyu easily identified the subtle flaws. His whole body revolved the 9 dragons' strength and shot out 9 beams of golden light consecutively, each striking the fleeting flaws. Just as he was brandishing the invincible sword body vigorously, attracting the loud cheers of the descendants of the gods, Burui staggered and was a little flustered. His swordsmanship became chaotic. Those who cheered and cheered could not help but be surprised, and their voices faded away. The lack of temperament is reflected in the swordsmanship. "Nephew, you need to calm down and cultivate. You need to know that complacency is the biggest taboo," Suyu commented. Burui's face turned red. Was he really being guided by him? In his imagination, as soon as his long sword was drawn, Suyu would roll on the ground in embarrassment, being guided by an all-creation's old monster in public. How could Burui keep his face? He roared, "The world of swordsmanship. The 3rd realm of swordsmanship, the highest realm." In an instant, hundreds of millions of sword lights filled the world and slashed toward Suyu. Looking at this move, Suyu's expression became a little more serious, but only a little. 10 Dragon's Body. The 10th dragon tendon that Suyu had never used before, the special dragon tendon that contained the divine blood, appeared. In his chest, near the position of the heart, a strong vein suddenly squirmed. In an instant, Suyu gained a power close to that of the gods. Although it was far inferior to the divine power, it was still ridiculously strong. In addition, the superposition of the 9 dragons' body was far from the explosive power of the 10th dragon tendon. What's more, the 10 dragons' body was the superposition of the 2 powers. Bang! 10 rays of golden light gathered and swept across the sky. Although there were hundreds of millions of sword lights, they were easily crushed by the golden light. Even as much as 10% of the remaining power of the golden light penetrated the golden light and went straight for Burui. Burui was caught off guard and was bombarded in the chest. He spat out a mouthful of blood and flew upside down. However, after all, he was a descendant of the gods. With the tip of his toes, he removed the force and stood firm. His chest was stained with blood, his clothes were tattered, and his neatly tied, ink-colored hair was disheveled. His image was a far cry from his former glory and splendor. At this moment, Burui heard Su Yu's faint comment. The sword light is fragile and can be destroyed with one sweep. To be honest, your third realm of swordsmanship is even worse than the second realm. Su Yu said mercilessly, swordsmanship is like cultivation. Only with a solid foundation can you build a strategically advantageous building. Otherwise, if the foundation is not stable, the high-rise building will be shaky. If you can't master it, what's the point of building it? His second realm of swordsmanship was not perfect enough, so the power of the third realm was greatly reduced. Even Jian Wuxing, whose cultivation was far lower than his, exerted more power than Burui. Being criticized again, and it was still the same word, completely infuriated Burui. His self-esteem had been stimulated like never before. Su Yu, you are courting death. Burui roared, and a half-red and half-yellow light was emitted from his pores, which was a sign of the blood of the gods. Burui, who was enraged, intended to use the ultimate move, the power of the descendant's blood. In an instant, a black sword shadow with a height of 100 feet appeared coldly behind Burui. Looking at the black sword shadow, Su Yu sensed danger. In the black sword shadow, there was the swordsmanship inherited from the blood of the sword god. That was the god-level swordsmanship. Divine path, fallen sword. Burui had an almost ferocious look on his face. Everything was different from what he expected. No, to be precise, it was completely different. He did not teach Su Yu a lesson, but was easily crushed to the ground by Su Yu. Moreover, he had suffered a crushing defeat in front of all his close friends and deities. Therefore, he must defeat Su Yu completely with a thunderous blow. Aren't you known as the reincarnation of the 9 dragons? Then, sacrifice your blood of the gods, and let me see which god you are the reincarnation of. Burui let out a grin. He did not believe anything at all. The saying of the reincarnation of the 9 dragons was all nonsense. Saying it in public would also puncture Su Yu's halo and make him more embarrassed. However, Su Yu still looked indifferent and sighed helplessly. He put his hands together, his expression solemn, and the 10 real spirit dragon veins in his body emitted extremely bright golden light. The golden light went from bright to dazzling, from dazzling to dazzling, and finally made people unable to look directly at it. Suddenly, there was a dragon's roar, and Su Yu, who was full of golden light, turned into a 10-feet-long golden dragon in front of everyone. Golden scales, long dragon whiskers, mighty dragon claws, and the breath of the divine dragon that exuded a touch of divine power. Suddenly, in the clouds, the descendants of the gods were in an uproar. They also did not believe in the reincarnation of the 9 dragons. There was no such thing as the 9 gods in the world, but Su Yu turned into a golden dragon in public, which really shocked them. Even Sheng Yuanxin and Yang Tai, who were the most familiar with Su Yu, were shocked. Burui was stunned for a moment, and his eyes were filled with deep shock, but he quickly reacted and urged the black sword shadow behind him to slash down. The golden dragon and the black sword. Was it the dragon that destroyed the sword shadow, or the black sword that killed the dragon? Bang! The loud sound of the sky, and the earth shook between heaven and earth. The dark shadow of the giant black sword was crushed by the golden dragon. The black sword shadow, derived from the power of the bloodline, was shattered, and Burui was injured and spat out a mouthful of blood again. Defeated, completely defeated. From the beginning to the end, he was crushed by Su Yu step by step. No, I surrender. Burui screamed. Slap. However, the next moment, a golden palm slammed on his face and slapped him to the ground. Then, a golden foot stepped on his chest, and the tyrannical dragon power nailed Burui to the ground, making him unable to move. Only a pair of eyes were left, fierce and resentful, staring at Suyu. What answered his eyes was Suyu's foot, stepping on his face. Under the great force, Burui even heard the sound of his skull cracking. Suyu, who had returned to his human form, removed the effect of the dragon transformation technique and looked down at Burui. You are not convinced because you know that I will not kill you. You're not convinced because you have a backer who is the sword god. You're unconvinced, not because you have a strong and unyielding character. On the contrary, this is a display of your cowardice. You don't even dare to admit your own shortcomings, and you're not even willing to accept your own defeat. You're pinning your hopes on your father, on your backer. Hearing this, many descendants of the gods were shocked by Suyu's arrogant behavior, but also deeply agreed. Suyu's words hit the nail on the head for Burui. People are not afraid of having shortcomings, but they are afraid of knowing the shortcomings and are not willing to face them. Suyu said lightly, "You have the identity of the Sun Luo law enforcer today, the enviable cultivation of the peak mortal fairy, and the halo of the descendants of the gods. In fact, that is just your good life. You are destined to get these from birth. In fact, you did not get these things yourself, but they were given by your father." The descendants of the gods were silent. If Burui was single finger before, now even the descendants of the gods were in the ranks of preaching. However, what Suyu said was not unreasonable. They listened to it harshly, but they had to admit that what he said was the truth. Chapter 1158. The descendants of the gods in the clouds, who were not convinced, also began to think about it. In fact, they understood this problem very well. Their father could protect them for a while, but he could not protect them forever. However, the overall environment of the descendants of the gods was depraved and lazy. They were born to be the peak mortal fairies, and if they performed well, they were destined to be the successors of the gods. They had no pursuit in their life, so they lacked the motivation to work hard. Although they knew that they might face life and death in the future, because those things were too far away and too unrealistic, they could not feel nervous and could not get the motivation to work hard. Perhaps you will say that I will never leave the Great Eastern Alliance. In the alliance of 100 gods, where did the demons come from, and where did the ferocious enemies come from? Suyu said in a powerful voice, and his mouth was full of cold mockery. Open your eyes and see. Is the Great Eastern Alliance really a bright holy land, a carefree paradise? In the eastern region of the Xing River, there were 10 independent cavern worlds in the past 100 years. What about now? 10 were destroyed. Do you know how close the nearest independent cavern world is to the paradise in your heart? 2 months. As long as 2 months, the demons entrenched there will be able to send troops. Perhaps you will say that the Great Eastern Alliance has the protection of the 100 gods, and the demons can't attack. Then, what if the demons are all out? Can the Great Eastern Alliance still hold? Maybe you will say that if the demons come at us with all their forces, we will take precautions in advance. If one man holds the pass against 10,000 enemies, the demons won't be able to leave. Suyu sneered. But what if you don't have time to prepare? Haven't you ever thought about what it means when all the independent cavern worlds are dead? Are the demons really just simply devouring the creatures inside? This time, not only the descendants of the gods, but even the gods at the top of the world heard a little bit of awe. This means that even if the entire demon race comes out, you can't know the news in the first place. Because the independent cavern worlds along the way are all destroyed, no one will send you a message. Let me ask, when the demons are only 2 months away from you, will you have time to prepare? The Great Eastern Alliance is such a big alliance. How long will it take to recruit soldiers from various cavern worlds? Is 2 months enough? So you asked. The descendants of the deities tensed up. The Great Eastern Alliance had to be fully mobilized. How could it take less than a year or two? 2 months. The cavern world at the edge of the continent didn't have enough time to react. How long will it take to recall the wandering gods? Is 2 months enough? The hearts of the descendants of the deities throbbed. Currently, More than half of the deities on the continent were out traveling. The latest ones would take 1 or 2 years, and some would even take up to 10 years to return. At that time, the gods were besieged by the gods of the demon race and couldn't even take care of themselves. Who would come to save you? Heaven or earth? If you yell at the devil that you're not convinced, will he be scared, shitless? In an instant, the world fell silent. In the sky and on the ground, apart from Suyu's voice, there was no other sound. If I were a demon, I would be letting myself down if I didn't attack now. Suyu sighed deeply. The more information he collected and the more he analyzed, the more he felt that the Great Eastern Alliance, which seemed to be prosperous, was in a precarious situation. The destruction of the independent cavern world was by no means a coincidence. It was the demon race's plan to cook the frog in warm water. When the Great Eastern Alliance reacted, everything would be over. However, his words carried little weight, and he was worried that he could not reach the gods. He could only reprimand Burui today and point out the shortcomings of the Great Eastern Alliance. The news was blocked, and the enemy did not know that the enemy had arrived. The forces were scattered, and the enemy took advantage of the situation to attack. I am afraid that the respective cavern world would only have time to fight their own battles and be swallowed by the demons one by one. The gods had not returned, and the demon gods had joined forces. Not only was the individual strength of the demon gods far stronger than that of the ordinary races, but they also had an absolute advantage in number. When the gods were destroyed, the Great Eastern Alliance would basically become the mouth of the demon race. However, the biggest drawback was that they were comfortable and had no sense of crisis. It was clear that the demons were close at hand, and the crisis could break out at any time, but they placed their hopes on the gods. When the danger came, they buried their heads in the sand, thinking that if they could not see it, the danger was equivalent to no danger. Even though Burui was unruly, Suyu's words were reasonable, and he could not help but be dissatisfied. Many descendants of the gods were even more alert. Among them, except for Yang Tai, who had a huge information network, few descendants of the gods would pay special attention to this, let alone analyze it, because there were gods above their heads. They were not anxious, so why should they be anxious? What they didn't know was that the gods had been anxious for a long time. This child has revealed the true situation of our Great Eastern Alliance. I wanted to hide it from the creatures of the Great Eastern Alliance, but now it seems that I can't hide it anymore. A god sighed. As a god, how could they not know everything that Suyu said? Even if they did not know the intention of the demons to swallow the independent cavern world along the way one by one, it should have been clear later. They had been preparing in secret to strengthen the information network. The business intelligence network of the all-access merchant god had the effect of monitoring the demons. However, because it crossed the entire galaxy, the transmission of information was slow, and the time to know the movements of the demons in advance was no more than a year. At the same time, they also began to secretly recall the gods as early as 10 years ago. As a result, 30 gods had not replied so far, and most of the gods who responded were on their way back. The nearest one would take a year, and the farthest one would still take 10 years to come back. If the demons really attacked, everything would go according to Su Yu's expectations. First of all, the remaining 50 gods would be crushed by the number and strength of the demons. Then, each cavern world would fight separately and be defeated by the demons one by one. Then, the alliance of the gods, which had illuminated the galaxy for millions of years, would turn into darkness and become a dead land. The Great Eastern Alliance was indeed in crisis, and the gods had long been under pressure. In order to appease the people and not cause panic, they hid it. Now, it was revealed by Suyu. It is said that this man is smart, and sure enough, if he had come to the Great Eastern Alliance a few decades earlier, maybe we would not have been so passive. A god looked at the Jing deity and exclaimed. Except for the Jing deity, who was supporting Suyu, the other gods were supporting Burui. At first, the Jing deity also felt a little isolated and very boring. When he heard this, he couldn't help but feel happy, as if Suyu had one face for him. Well, Suyu is proficient in calculation and resourcefulness. You can't help but admire him. The Jing deity praised. This was a compliment, but it was from the bottom of his heart. Ha! Ha! His strength is also amazing. 10 real dragon spirit veins have been transplanted into his body. To be precise, 10 prospective deities' dragon tendons have been transplanted into his body. No wonder the dragon form technique is so powerful. Another deity was impressed by Su Yu's strength. The situation that was thought to be one-sided was really one-sided, but it was Burui who was on the losing side. Many gods praised Su Yu. If Su Yu had defeated Burui, they would not have done so for the sake of the sword god. What really moved them was Su Yu's words. There were countless heroes in the Great Eastern Alliance, but there were very few who were as sober as him. Naturally, it was inevitable that they would appreciate it. Many of the gods who had been disgusted by him, because of the gods he had kidnapped back, then also nodded slightly and gave him a look of approval. At this moment, the sword god moved. In a flash, the sword god came to Su Yu and Burui. Su Yu nodded lightly and loosened his foot. Burui stood up awkwardly, lowered his head, and said nothing. "Have you learned your lesson?" The sword god said indifferently. Burui's lips were slightly pursed, and he lowered his head. His defeat, coupled with a sharp argument, finally dispelled his arrogance. The eyes of the sword god, hidden under the divine light, moved slightly and flashed with a bit of relief. Burui's shortcomings in his swordsmanship, as the sword god, how could he not see them? However, no matter how much advice he gave, Burui was proud and arrogant. He was proud of his amazing talent and disdained to pay attention to it. As a result, his swordsmanship had reached its current level. In addition, relying on the sword god, he was rampant and no one dared to wake him up until today. After you go back, do a good retreat. I understand. Burui bowed his head, gritted his teeth, and bowed to Su Yu. Thank you, Feather God, for your guidance. After saying this, he broke through the air and flew away. Su Yu and the sword god were left on the field, and many gods were secretly worried about Su Yu. Just now, Su Yu stepped on Burui to the ground and deliberately humiliated him. As a father, it was hard to say what the sword god would do. Su Yu, as a father, I should pay a tooth for a tooth. How you treat my son, I will treat you the same way. The sword god said lightly. Hearing this, the Jing god immediately came and stared at the sword god. Although he was not the opponent of the sword god at all, sitting back and watching Su Yu being punished would not destroy their plan. However, as a sword god, I'm very glad that you treated him like this today, so that he can have a chance of survival in the future war between humans and demons. The sword god showed a faint kindness and raised his hand to take out a pill full of divine light. This is a heaven soul pill. It will benefit your soul. Consider it my reward. The sword god was worthy of being one of the 9 gods. At a glance, he saw that Su Yu was facing a breakthrough in the soul. Su Yu thanked him. Thank you, sword god. The sword god nodded. Well, take on the spot. This pill contains my divine light. The longer it leaves me, the weaker the effect. Without thinking, Su Yu took it on the spot. This move won a good impression from the sword god. Aren't you afraid that there is a problem with the pill? Su Yu asked. If the sword god wants to do something to me, do you still need to rely on the pill? Oh, interesting boy. The sword god chuckled. See you tomorrow at the carnival of all gods. After that, he returned to the peak of the world and reunited with several gods. Sword god, this boy is witty and smart. Now he is the agent of the crane god cavern world. It is better to let him participate in our discussion about killing the demons. The sword god nodded. Yes, but wait until the end of the carnival of all gods. Chapter 1159. However, the crowd that came to watch the battle today was complicated. They might be prospective deities from some cavern world, so he didn't think too much about it. Boy, I'm leaving too, the Jing deity said. Su Yu nodded. He didn't want the Jing deity to participate in the annihilation of the prospective deities of the Netherworld faction. Once he caught the 2 prospective deities with the power of the gods, he would learn that they came from the family of the book deity, and then learn that the agreement between him and Sheng Yuanxin was about Qin Kuo's case, not the carnival of all gods that he was concerned about. It was not difficult to imagine how angry the Jing deity would be if he learned that he had been deceived and killed him. There was no guarantee that he wouldn't do something bad to Suyu. The anger of a god was 1,000 times more troublesome than the killer of the Netherworld faction. Therefore, Suyu dared not let him intervene. "Tomorrow, we will go according to plan," Suyu said. The Jing deity nodded vigilantly and teleported away. It was reasonable for the sword god to order Suyu to swallow the elixir on the spot. Not only was the effect of the elixir perfect, but it was also extremely easy to digest. When the Jing deity left, Suyu had digested the elixir. Suyu clearly felt that his soul power had skyrocketed. From the current stage for all creation's realm, he had reached the realm of the mortal fairy in one go. The soul power of the mortal fairy was extremely powerful, and there was a world of difference between it and the all creations. At this moment, Suyu didn't have to deliberately perceive it, but he could clearly perceive a hidden and carefully restrained killing intent in the crowd. The killer of the Netherworld faction. Only one person? Suyu's eyes flashed. Moreover, Suyu's thoughts were more fluent, and even his thinking was more agile. Not only his perception, thinking, and other aspects related to the soul had undergone unprecedented qualitative changes. What surprised him even more was that with the qualitative change of the soul, the barrier of the illusionary soul realm, which was only one layer, was finally broken, and he had naturally comprehended it to the top level. The role of the lower level of the illusionary soul realm was to confuse the enemy. The top level was to imitate all the magical powers of the enemy, and the top level was to control the enemy. Suyu was surprised. Why was the power of the upper level so extraordinary, but the top level seemed ordinary? He had achieved controlling the enemy through the imperial soul realm of the heaven sun, gazing at air, a long time ago. Why did the top level of the illusionary soul realm go back? It was only when a piece of information appeared in Suyu's mind that he revealed a surprised expression. So that's how it is. This great circle is even more tyrannical than imitating other people's divine abilities and precious techniques. Suyu's face was filled with joy, and he had another idea. At that moment, Suyu finally felt that obscure, murderous intent, which had suddenly appeared. The killers of the Netherworld school had made their move. Just as the gods were about to leave, he suddenly made his move. It was a burly man, his muscles full and powerful, and there was a faint divine power filling his body. He was a prospective deity master. In a split second, he appeared in front of Suyu, caught him off guard, and thrust a dagger that was covered in deadly poison towards Suyu. Regardless of whether it could penetrate into Suyu's body, as long as Suyu's skin was slightly cut, the poison would be enough to kill him on the spot. However, Suyu was prepared. He took out a golden arrow and stabbed it at the quasi-god without hesitation. The two shot almost at the same time, but in terms of length, the celestial destroying arrow was longer than the dagger. At the same distance, the dagger had not yet pierced Suyu's body, and the killer would be pierced by the celestial destroying arrow. The killer's heart sank slightly. Suyu's reaction speed was beyond expectations, which was enough to prove that their previous judgment was correct. This assassination was a trap waiting for them. Break! The killer failed to hit, and he detonated the dagger very decisively. However, there was a loud explosion. The dagger of a low-grade fairy artifact was sacrificed just like that. The dagger exploded, and a large amount of poison broke out. Along with the dagger fragments, they attacked Suyu. The celestial destroying arrow in Suyu's palm had to change its attack to block. It moved in front of him and blocked all the dagger fragments. Taking advantage of this opportunity, the killer whispered and condensed a divine power from his abdomen. As soon as the divine power came out, it turned into a golden light and shot directly between Suyu's eyebrows. At this moment, Suyu was blocking the fragments and could not react. Even in a dangerous situation, the killer's ability to adapt to the situation was almost instinctive, and he seized Suyu's flaws. Suyu's heart suddenly jumped, and he knew it was not good. At this critical moment, Suyu shouted in a low voice, "Shunga!" Swoosh! Suyu's arm flashed with green light, and Shunga flashed out. There was a butterfly quietly sitting on Shunga's head. "Little butterfly, he wants to steal your food to eat." Hearing this, The quiet chaos multicolored butterfly suddenly became angry. Shunga had always taught it that there was only one hatred in the world, and that was the hatred of stealing food. The hatred of stealing food. The chaos multicolored butterfly kept this in mind. Seeing that the person in front of it wanted to steal its food, it immediately flapped its wings angrily. He flapped his wings slightly, and the deadly divine power that was attacking Su Yu collapsed under the flapping of his wings. At the same time, the killer's face changed, and he hurriedly retreated. He saw that his burly body had cracks as thick as an arm, from head to toe, and even his soul was severely injured. The killer was shocked. Who was this inconspicuous butterfly? With just a flap of its wings, it made him almost die. If it weren't for the few divine powers in his body to protect himself, his soul would have been destroyed just now, and it would have been impossible for his soul to escape. However, the killer did not give up. He took out something backhand and stuffed it into his mouth. The injuries on the surface of his body and the injuries on his soul were immediately healed. As a killer, there was no shortage of top-grade healing elixirs. However, the killer had just recovered from his injuries, and suddenly there was a warning in his heart, as if something extremely dangerous was coming. He saw Suyu stretch out his palm and point at him from distance. A Milky Way light flickered faintly, and then a long halberd, which was as black as ink and full of shocking evil spirits, pierced through the void. The killer was shocked. The long halberd contained some kind of extremely evil spirits. Even he was scared out of his wits. Moreover, these evil spirits were all the power of the gods. If this long halberd really hit him, he would die. At the critical moment, the killer bit the tip of his tongue and spat out a faint golden blood. It was the blood of the quasi-god. The blood turned into a shield behind him, trying in vain to resist the long halberd for a moment, giving him time to react calmly. However, this was, after all, a complete god like the tree goddess, who had been pinned down for thousands of years. How could the blood of a quasi-god resist it? Poof! The shield formed by the quasi-god's blood did not even resist for a moment and was penetrated by the long halberd. The killer was shocked. He gritted his teeth again and took out 3 straw men. The straw men looked very similar to the killer. The 3 straw men were thrown out in 3 directions. The movement of the long halberd penetrating the killer slowed down, and he actually lost his target. Because in the perception of the long halberd, the direction of the 3 straw men was the same as the killer. Taking advantage of this opportunity, the killer did not retreat and counterattacked. He teleported away from the long halberd and roared towards Su Yu. Su Yu's pupils shrank slightly. If it was an ordinary person who found out that the enemy had such an absolutely crushing weapon in his hands, he would have already chosen to escape. However, this killer was quick-witted and knew that this was the best opportunity. Die! The killer's voice was still in the air, and there was another poisoned dagger in his palm, which was stabbed fiercely towards Su Yu. Su Yu did not think about it, and raised the celestial destroying arrow to stab it. However, the killer shouted fiercely, "Seize the weapon!" A strange scene happened. The celestial destroying arrow in Su Yu's hand suddenly disappeared and appeared in the hands of the killer. This was the divine path of the killer. Seize the weapon. At the moment of life and death, if his weapon was seized, wouldn't it be a dead end? Just as the dagger was less than 3 inches away from Su Yu, suddenly, from Su Yu's arm, a white finger stretched out. That finger lightly tapped on the dagger. The killer was horrified. Regardless of the poison on the dagger, his own stab had the power of a quasi-god. However, his arm at this moment could not stab, as if there was a power above him in that finger. Really, this is a treasure. What if I hurt the children if I throw it away? Even if I can't hurt the children, it will be distressing if the flowers and plants are hurt. Well, I will take it for you. The finger flicked on the dagger, and the killer's body was bounced off uncontrollably. The dagger was glued to the finger. Then, an arm appeared in the green light, and then a beautiful girl in an emerald green dress walked out of it, exuding the breath of nature and life. She quickly put the dagger in her sleeve. That speed was unparalleled. When the killer saw this person, he was shocked and lost his voice. God, Yes, it was a god, and the power of the gods that naturally exuded was not fake. Although the killer quickly saw that this god seemed to be seriously injured and was not as strong as he imagined, it was no problem for her to be stronger than him. What a trap! Even the gods were prepared. The killer's eyes turned, and he immediately turned to escape. The tree goddess chased after him with a smile. Don't go, I tell you, there are many bad people in the world. It is actually very dangerous for you to walk around with so many treasures. As for me, I am a goddess with a bottom line, a sense of honor, and a caring heart. You give all the treasures to me for safekeeping, and I will pay you interest on time every year. You are the biggest bad person in the world. The killer, who was fleeing, stumbled and almost fell. Oh, it doesn't matter if you fall, but the treasures must be fine. A god and a prospective god, one chasing and the other fleeing. In an instant, they had escaped an unknown distance. Looking at the mess on the ground, Suyu sighed. A quasi-god is really difficult to deal with. Suyu could crush Burui, who was a peak mortal fairy, but a quasi-god in the early stage put Suyu in danger. This was the case when Suyu was prepared. If he was not prepared, he would have been poisoned by the dagger as early as the first move. In the end, it was the tree goddess who took action. However, just when everyone was relieved, Suyu sneered. I have been waiting for you for a long time. 9 Suns, Sword Formation. Whoosh! Chapter 1160. At the same time, Suyu's figure flashed out of the sword formation. A barely discernible black shadow followed Suyu and was about to leave the sword formation. However, as soon as the black shadow moved, the sword formation was suddenly activated. A sharp silver sword cut through the black shadow and forced it back. Suyu left the sword formation and looked into it, but he couldn't see the killer. To be precise, Suyu could clearly feel that there was a black shadow in the sword formation, but when Suyu glanced at her, his eyes were always forcibly averted. Is this her divine path? Suyu thought to himself. In the sword formation, the black shadow flickered constantly, trying to leave the sword formation, but found that it was a very superior sword formation, and it couldn't find a flaw to leave the sword formation. You knew there was a second killer? The black shadow was a woman, but her voice had lost its gentleness, and there was a hint of murderous intent. Suyu said lightly, Of course I knew. This kind of thing is easy to guess. The Netherworld faction claims to never fail a mission, but how can there be 10,000 things in this world? There will always be a what-if situation, and you can maintain a record of never failing until today. In addition to the quality of the killers, there must be a more important factor, and that is a backup plan. If a killer makes a mistake, there must be another or even 2, 3, or even countless killers to make up for the what-if situation. So, I guess there are at least 2 killers coming to deal with me this time. If you take me seriously, you should have sent a third one, Suyu said as he glanced around. The charming woman was secretly startled. She believed the rumors about this boy's intelligence to be 100% true. This man's calculations were flawless, and his ability to set up and design was unpredictable. If she were to reevaluate, she would raise the difficulty of this mission by 2 levels, to level 6. This was the difficulty of assassinating a middle-stage prospective deity. In that case, you've secretly set up this sword formation while you were fighting the other assassin? The charming woman asked. Suyu nodded lightly. If not, how could he have been in danger several times? That was because Suyu had been distracted with setting up the 9 Sun sword formation and had no time to deal with the first killer, so his reaction was not sharp enough. You were so calculative. The charming woman sucked in a breath of cold air. It was no wonder that she had been fooled so easily. He was really too cunning. Without batting an eyelid, he set up the 9 Suns sword formation and even pretended to be relaxed to lure her into making a move. You flatter me, Suyu said calmly. Then, his expression turned cold. Behead him. This sound came without any warning. The gentlewoman was startled once more. She shouted in a deep voice, You can tell that I'm stalling for time? What a joke. It's just a trick to stall for time. What else can I see? As Suyu's voice faded, the 9 heavenly orchid silver bamboo swords were suddenly activated. In an instant, 9 silver lights flickered and weaved into a space that sealed off 9 angles, surrounding the charming woman and isolating her from the outside world. The charming woman gritted her teeth and took out a bronze-colored comb. The comb was a middle-grade immortal artifact. As she combed through the air, the 9 suns' sword formation began to sway. A few of the heavenly orchid silver bamboo swords that were closer to it also began to tremble as though they were about to be expelled from the sword formation. Fortunately, the sword formation was activated. In an instant, the 9 silver lights penetrated back and forth in the enclosed space hundreds of times. The black-clothed woman did not even say a word. She stood there motionlessly. With a cracking sound, the comb in her hand was broken into countless pieces, and she was also cut into pieces hundreds of times. When the 9 sun sword formation stopped operating, only the powdered comb and a pair of minced flesh were left on the ground. The crane deity's family was stunned. What kind of sword formation was this? It could strangle a prospective deity so easily. Suyu glanced at it and said lightly, "I've underestimated a prospective deity after all. Can't you be killed like this?" The minced flesh on the ground turned into black flames with a puff. From the flames, a pitch-black phoenix was born. Its feathers were deep black, emitting wisps of black air. A pair of cold phoenix eyes stared at Suyu coldly. Phoenix rebirth. It turns out that your original form is a black phoenix. Looking at the wisps of black air emitted from her body, Suyu said in awe, "Rebirth. Once she died, she could be reborn immediately. Invisibility was her divine path, and rebirth was her talent." As expected, a prospective deity was not so easy to kill. "Human brat, you killed me once. Can you kill me again?" The black phoenix flapped its wings, and its graceful phoenix body slowly floated into the sky. The black air around it became darker and darker. Suyu was no stranger to that air. It was the energy of death, which was enough to kill Suyu. Her words were still floating in the air, but her body had already flown over Suyu's head. Her sharp phoenix claws were wrapped in a dense energy of death, and she made a fatal claw at Suyu. Without hesitation, Suyu grabbed the long halberd of evil fatal energy with one hand and collided with the claws. Suddenly, a terrible force came along the long halberd, trying to destroy Suyu's body. At the critical moment, 10 rays of light shot out from Suyu's body at the same time. His body turned into a golden dragon, and he attacked with all his might. However, a miserable groan was heard. Not only did the black phoenix fail to kill Suyu, but Suyu's long halberd penetrated the phoenix's claws, and pitch-black blood flowed out. The black phoenix lifted its claws and escaped from the long halberd. The black phoenix swooped down, spitting out black air from its mouth like flames, and rolled towards Suyu. Burning death. Poof! The black flames contained fatal danger, and they engulfed Suyu. With a dull sound, Suyu's golden dragon body was burned into ashes by the flames. Feather God. The face of the crane deity's family changed dramatically. Suyu was dead. A hint of relief appeared in the black phoenix's eyes. Looking down at the black air flowing ceaselessly from the phoenix's claws and sensing the remaining evil fatal energy in her body, she couldn't help but smile bitterly in her heart. Sacrificing a killer to distract the strongest tree goddess, she still performed a rebirth from the ashes, and with severe injuries, she barely managed to kill this person. The difficulty of this mission was definitely comparable to a level 6 mission. However, the mission was finally completed, and it was time to retreat. However, right at this moment, the black phoenix looked at the pile of ashes on the ground abruptly, and gradually, her eyes were filled with horror. All of a sudden, a mass of pitch-black flames emerged from the ashes on the ground. Then, from the pitch-black flames, a giant black dragon flew out. Rebirth from the ashes? The black phoenix couldn't believe her eyes. Wasn't this her innate magical power? Moreover, it was a unique talent of phoenixes. Why did it appear in this dragon? Surprise, shock, and confusion flickered in her eyes at the same time. Then, a deep murderous intention flashed in her eyes. This human was so weird that the Black Phoenix felt extremely uneasy. Swish! With a sharp, air-piercing sound, the Black Phoenix swooped down again. She wanted to kill Suyu when he was still unstable after his rebirth from the ashes. However, right at this moment, Suyu shouted softly, "Giant divine soldier!" Boom! Boom! All of a sudden, the whole ground started to shake violently. In the backyard of the crane deity's family, a secret chamber was smashed by a fist that was as large as 1,000 feet. It was a fist that stretched out from the ground. Then, as if the sky and earth were being split apart, a huge crack that was thousands of feet thick appeared in the mansion of the crane deity's family. From the depths of the ground, a giant whose whole body was golden climbed out. On the head of the giant stood Wang Yunxian, who was laughing heartily. "Little Sue, I'm here to help you." However, after standing up, the giant didn't move at all and didn't obey his orders. Wang Yunxuan's face stiffened. "What's going on? Wasn't it very obedient during the test? Is it broken again?" The Black Phoenix looked at the giant metal giant that was as tall as 10,000 feet in shock. She could feel that the giant was giving off a very powerful aura. At least, it was far beyond what she could handle. Apart from the trepidation, the Black Phoenix's only consolation was that the giant divine soldier seemed to have some problems after it was refined. It didn't obey orders. Seizing the opportunity, the Black Phoenix's eyes flashed with cold, murderous intent. She clawed at Suyu fiercely, trying to kill him again. However, right at this moment, a giant fist that was as large as 1,000 feet fell from the sky. All of a sudden, the Black Phoenix was taken aback. Looking up, all she could see was darkness. The fist had covered the whole sky. How could she dare to continue clawing at Suyu? Spreading her black wings, she flew away rapidly. However, just as she dodged the fist, the top of her head turned black again. Another fist was coming at her, which was well prepared. The Black Phoenix had nowhere to hide and was hit by the giant divine soldier's fist. Puff! Blood splattered everywhere. The Black Phoenix's body was smashed into pieces. It turned out that at this critical moment, the giant divine soldier suddenly obeyed orders again. Black flames rose from the meat paste that the Black Phoenix had turned into again. Apparently, it was going to be reborn again. Suyu's eyes flashed coldly. "Do you think I'll let you resurrect?" Titter. The long halberd of evil fatal energy pierced through the sky and nailed the meat paste into the meat paste. The powerful, evil, fatal energy extinguished the flames. No matter how hard the meat paste wriggled and tried to be reborn, it couldn't move the long halberd at all. If it could be moved so easily, the tree goddess had been nailed to the throne for so many years. That would be such a waste. Poof! All of a sudden, a small cluster of black flames emerged and transformed into a black phoenix the size of a thumb. It stared at Suyu coldly. "You can't kill me. No matter how many times you kill me, I can always be resurrected." Chapter 1161. Suddenly, a cry of surprise came. It was the tree goddess who had returned. She stood behind Suyu and looked at him in surprise. "My dear Feather, you are so talented. Even I can't think of such a quick and easy way to make money," the tree goddess exclaimed. Suyu said with a gloomy face, "Why am I not happy to be praised by you?" "Oh, my dear Feather, you are too great. You are the god of light. You have pointed out the direction of light for me, who was lost. You have lit up a light of hope for my dark life. I have decided that from today onwards, I will train this black phoenix and open up our fantasy circus." The tree goddess rubbed her hands, saliva dripping from the corners of her mouth, as if she had already seen the scene of her hands going numb from collecting tickets. The black phoenix sneered. "Don't act. Do you think you can scare the killer of the Netherworld faction with a little intimidation? You have underestimated the Netherworld faction." Suyu touched his nose. I didn't mean to scare you, but that rogue god might not." The tree goddess was so poor that she could do anything devoid of conscience. "I do want to pry some information about the Netherworld faction from you," Suyu said calmly. "After all, those who dare to kill me have no reason to live in this world." Hearing that, the black phoenix was stunned. This guy was so arrogant. didn't want to wipe out the Netherworld faction? Even though she knew this person was good at scheming, the Black Phoenix just smiled contemptuously, because the Great Eastern Alliance was not sure that they could wipe out the Netherworld faction. When a Netherworld faction was at its peak, it assassinated 3 deities in a row. As a result, the Great Eastern Alliance sent 20 deities deep into the land of divine remains, ready to give the Netherworld School a thunderous blow. But in the end, the Netherworld School was safe and sound, while the 20 deities returned in frustration. Among them, 2 deities were left behind forever. It was not only because the world of divine remains was close to the demon territory and had a special geographical location. It was also because the world of divine remains shared a common enemy and regarded the Great Eastern Alliance as a potential enemy. Entering the world of divine remains was like falling into a vast ocean. There were enemies everywhere. They couldn't even find the specific location of the Netherworld faction, so how could they destroy it? Haha, before you came, you didn't expect to fall into the hands of an All Creations Junior, did you? So you smiled faintly. There might be impossible things in this world, but that was before you met me. I will pay a visit to the Netherworld School sooner or later. Hearing Suyu's confident words, the Black Phoenix did not know why, but she was a little worried. This young human was completely different from any of the enemies she had encountered before. No matter what you do to me, whether you torture me, tempt me, or force me to confess, don't even think about getting information about the Netherworld faction out of me. As an assassin of the Netherworld faction, I've long been prepared to die. The Black Phoenix looked as if she had been freed, and she wasn't afraid of Suyu's threat in the slightest. Suyu's lips curled into a smile. Did no one tell you that the path of souls exists in this world? If you want to know the secrets of a person's soul, you don't have to ask them yourself. Soul search or mind control? All of us assassins have received the protection of the Death God. Our souls can't be searched or controlled by outsiders. Looking at the Black Phoenix's fearless expression, Suyu said indifferently, "What a foolish woman. You have forgotten my words so quickly. There might be impossible things in this world, but that was before you met me." You. The Black Phoenix looked at Suyu in shock. Before she could finish speaking, 2 beams of green light shot out of Suyu's eyes abruptly. The Black Phoenix was caught off guard and was instantly hit by the green light. The 2 beams of green light were very domineering. They turned into 2 sharp arrows that pierced through her soul and nailed it in place, rendering it motionless. The Black Phoenix's eyes struggled for a moment. Then, her expression gradually softened and calmed down. At last, the virtual figure bowed in the air and said gently, "I am Liloa of the Black Phoenix clan. Greetings, Master. I have offended you before. Please punish me, Master." The tree goddess blinked her eyes and said, "What an overbearing, soul-controlling technique. The method of control is not coercion, but forcibly controlling her thoughts and making her acknowledge you as her master. Even the gods who cultivate the path of the soul can rarely achieve such a technique." This was the effect of the great completion of the illusionary soul realm. It was peerlessly domineering and could make the one being controlled willingly submit to it. In this way, not only was the mind of the one being controlled preserved, but all of her strength was also preserved. To put it simply, it could turn any enemy into a loyal servant in the blink of an eye. Its domineering nature was remarkable. Of course, the precondition was that the target had to be weak or defenseless. Tell me the details of the Netherworld faction. After a while, Suyu's eyes flickered. The structure of the Netherworld faction was extremely complicated. Early-stage prospective deities like Lilua could only be regarded as mid-level figures in the Netherworld faction. Above them were the top-notch killers of middle-stage prospective deities and late-stage prospective deities. Further up was the most mysterious master of the Netherworld faction, the Death Deity. Having learned a lot about the Netherworld faction, Suyu nodded slowly and put away the long halberd. Lilua was reborn from the flames and turned into a beautiful middle-aged woman. She knelt on the ground and listened to Suyu's orders at all times. Her expression was very natural, without any sense of being forced. What about the other killer? Suyu looked at the tree goddess. The tree goddess clutched her pocket tightly and pouted. I urgently need to replenish my godly spirit. The godly spirit of this prospective deity is not stable enough. I can just dig it out and use it as my supplement. Suyu said placidly. How much can a mere prospective deity replenish for you? If you are obedient during tomorrow's carnival of all gods, I can help you greatly replenish your godly spirit. Haha, I know you love me. My good husband. When are we getting married? And then get a divorce and divide my assets, right? Yes. That's exactly what I'm thinking. How can you be so righteous? The tree goddess handed the first killer she caught to Suyu. He was in good condition, which showed how easy it was for the tree goddess to catch him. As soon as he came out, his first reaction was not to escape, but to assassinate Suyu, who was right in front of him. With the tree goddess around, he could not escape, so he could only capture Suyu. Humph! Liloa, who was half kneeling on the ground, snorted coldly and struck out with her palm. Both of them were early-stage prospective deities, but Liloa's combat power was obviously a notch higher than his, and she managed to repel him. The killer was shocked. Liloa, have you pledged allegiance to her? From Liloa's eyes, the killer could not see any signs of her soul being manipulated. You want to kill my master? I'll kill you first. Liloa's eyes were filled with malice. She was about to finish him off when Suyu stopped her. The tree goddess understood. With a shift of her mind, a large number of vines grew from the ground and entangled the killer abruptly, wrapping him up like a huge dumpling, only revealing a pair of eyes and mouth. I can also pledge allegiance to you, the killer said. Suyu said placidly, Do you believe what you just said? The killer said, If Liloa can pledge allegiance to you, so can I, Jingang. One killer from the Netherworld faction is enough for me. What's the use of one more? Suyu said placidly, In terms of capability, position in the Netherworld faction, and information about the Netherworld faction, you're far from Liloa's. It's meaningless to take you in. Jingang naturally did not pledge allegiance willingly, but seized the opportunity to escape and kill Suyu. However, although I don't intend to take you in, you're still of great value to me. Suyu smiled faintly and cast a glance at the tree goddess. The tree goddess smiled. With a shift of her mind, Jingang's soul was suppressed until it was in a weakened state, unable to resist. Next, Suyu successfully controlled it as well. The two prospective deities half-knelt before Suyu. Only then did he Rushu approach with a face full of shame. Feather God, we're really useless. Suyu had encountered an assassination attempt at the doorstep of the Crane deity's family. The Crane deity's family was full of people, but they had no powerful fighters to use. It was truly a tragedy. Your capability is limited. If you rush up rashly, apart from becoming hostages for the killers and hindering me from killing them, you won't be of much use. You've done well to stop your people, Suyu said approvingly. If Hirushu hadn't stopped his people, the scene would have been chaotic, and chaos was advantageous to the killers. Feather God, these two killers, how are you going to deal with them? Hirushu's eyelids twitched as he looked at the two prospective deities of the Netherworld faction. Rumor had it that the prospective deity killers of the Netherworld faction were extraordinarily powerful. Any one of them could kill an ordinary prospective deity of the Great Eastern Alliance on their own. Unexpectedly, two of them were killed by the Feather God in a row. More importantly, they obeyed Suyu's orders now, which indirectly increased the strength of the Crane deity's family. Suyu pointed at Liloa. Take her back to the family to rest and recuperate. For the next period of time, she will temporarily guard the Crane deity's family on my behalf. The Carnival of All Gods was about to begin. As a substitute deity, Suyu was likely to be away for a long time. As for Jingang, Suyu's lips curled into a cold smile. It's impolite not to reciprocate. Great young Master Qin misses me so much. If I don't pay him a visit, it'll be disrespectful. Two traps, each more dangerous than the last. If he didn't return the favor, upon hearing Suyu's words, a voice filled with hatred sounded. Lord Feather God, if you want to go to the Crane deity's family, I'm willing to lead the way. Turning his head, he saw it was Bu Tiei, the former captain of the law enforcement team in the Crane deity's cavern world. That day, he was used by Qin Feichen and thrown into the Crane deity's cavern world in an attempt to kill Suyu. Whether Suyu would die or not, Buqiayi would definitely be killed. Qin Feichen was obviously sending him to his death. Suyu said with a smile, "After all, he was your former master. Can you be so cruel?" Buqiayi revealed a look of hatred. "It's not that I'm heartless, but the book deity's family is unjust. I'm willing to serve you, Lord Feather God." Suyu cast a meaningful look at Buqiayi and said with a faint smile, "All right, after this, you'll stay in the Crane deity's cavern world and stay by my side." In response, Wang Yunxian only chuckled. "A fine bird chooses a good tree to nest in. I have no objection." How could Buqiayi's little scheme be hidden from the two of them? Buqiayi took the initiative to lead the way and offer his services, hoping to gain Suyu's protection. Chapter 1162. Thank you, Feather God. Thank you, Master Wang. Buqiayi was overjoyed. His eyes were cold. Book deity's family, don't blame me this time. Feather God, I have something to report to you, Buqiayi said. After Suyu nodded, Buqiayi said, "Feather God, have you ever wondered why Qin Feichen could see through your weakness? I heard that the book deity's family has a treasure called the book deity's treasury. It gathers all the knowledge in the world and can see through all secrets. Did Qin Feichen use it?" Buqiayi said yes. The book deity's treasury is formed by the accumulated knowledge of the past book deities. It is mysterious and extraordinary. Once it is used, no secret in the world can be hidden from the book deity's treasury. Feather God, you'd better destroy the book deity's treasury. Otherwise, it will be a great threat to the Feather God. So he was good at scheming. If Qin Feichen used the book deity's treasury and saw through Suyu's plan, he would be able to give Suyu a fatal blow at some point. If Rushu hadn't tipped him off, he would have been killed. The book deity's treasury? Suyu also felt the threat of this thing. It would be a great threat if it was not eliminated. Tomorrow was the carnival of all gods. His and the Jing deity's plot was a shocking event that could not be exposed. Once the 100 deities knew about it, they would attack together and kill the two of them. If Qin Feichen heard some news and used the book deity's treasury to investigate, then Suyu broke out in a cold sweat. How could there be such a thing in the world that shouldn't exist? Buqiayi looked around and said in a low voice, "In fact, the deities are also very dissatisfied with the book deity's family building the book deity's treasury because their secrets are always in the book deity's family's hands. However, they can't destroy the treasure without a good reason. If the Feather God is willing to destroy it, the deities won't stop you when you attack. They might even help you secretly. Is that so?" Suyu's eyes were cold. He had too many secrets that he didn't want others to know. He had to destroy the book deity's treasury. "Little Su, are we going to do something big again?" Wang Yunxian hadn't recovered from the excitement of destroying the two prospective deities of the Netherworld faction. Suddenly, he learned that Suyu was going to do another earth-shattering thing. Wang Yunxian was instantly energized. "Bring the giant god warrior and follow me. Let's go and give Qin Feichen a big gift," Suyu said with a cold smile. Swish, swish. Suddenly, a large number of sharp auras came from afar. They were the descendants of the deities who had left and returned. When they sensed the shocking phenomenon, they all turned back to take a look. Suyu's eyes flickered, and he secretly ordered Jing Yang to pretend that it couldn't defeat the enemy and flee for its life. As an assassin, King Kong's camouflage skills were superb. He flew backward and spat out a mouthful of blood. He crashed heavily on the ground, as if he had suffered a powerful blow. Jing Yang stood up quickly and shouted, "Suyu, don't even think about stopping me from killing the descendants of the gods today." As it spoke, King Kong transformed into a stream of light and fled. Suyu and Wang Yunxuan's faces tightened. Then they shouted, "With us here today, the assassins of the Netherworld faction will not be able to leave this place alive." Swish, swish. The two of them jumped onto the giant god warrior and controlled it to run wildly on the ground. Although the giant god warrior was huge, it was very agile and fast. Its speed was no less than that of an early-stage prospective deity. This giant soldier god, which was thousands of feet tall, was a mysterious weapon that Wang Yunxian had refined based on the blueprint found in the god's relic. The blueprint called this weapon a giant soldier god. The lowest level of this weapon had the terrifying strength of a prospective deity. If there were enough materials, it would not be a problem to refine it into a late-stage prospective deity. Unfortunately, all of these materials were rare and precious objects in the starry sky that were as old as 10,000 years. They were completely extinct on the continent. The only way to find them was in the Xing River. Hearing that, Su Yu's heart skipped a beat. He paid attention to the names of those materials. Not long after they left, they ran into the descendants of the deities who had returned. Feather deity, what happened? Shang Yuanxin, who was the leader of the descendants of the deities, said with a serious face, I sense the aura of a prospective deity. Su Yu said seriously, yes. I found 2 prospective deities from the Netherworld faction were tailing you. So, we had a fierce battle. One of them was subdued by me. The other one escaped. Tailing us? The descendants of the deities turned pale immediately. For them, the Netherworld School was a dreadful existence that would make them turn pale at the mere mention of it. Moreover, it was at the level of prospective deities. Except for Shang Yuanxin, who had the strength to contend with them, the rest of the people present would only face the fate of being slaughtered. After learning that one of them escaped, they even forgot how Su Yu could subdue one of them. Shang Yuanxin looked at Su Yu suspiciously. However, as the Sunluo law enforcer, she couldn't ignore the killers of the Netherworld faction intruding the Great Eastern Alliance. She said, I will go with you to kill these killers. Yang Tai touched his chin. He was the only one who knew those 2 killers didn't come for the descendants of the deities, but for Su Yu. Now, Su Yu lied to them. Yang Tai couldn't help but laugh. What is this guy thinking? Haha, it seems interesting. I will go and have a look. The rest of you, go to the nearby cavern world immediately and ask for the protection of the local deities. We will go and kill the killers of the Netherworld faction. Shang Yuanxin dispersed the crowd and went after the killers with Su Yu, Wang Yunxian, and Yang Tai. The news spread in the streets at an amazing speed. Big news. Have you heard? The prospective deity killers of the Netherworld faction came to the Great Eastern Alliance to slaughter the descendants of the deities. However, one of them was subdued by the Feather God, and the other was seriously injured. What? The prospective deity killers of the Netherworld faction? What? The Feather God is so powerful. Even the prospective deity killers of the Netherworld faction were subdued by him? No way. Is the Feather God so powerful? Why is it impossible? I heard that the Feather God turned into a golden dragon in public and defeated Burui easily. He is a real deity reincarnated by 9 dragons. By the way, what kind of deity is the 9 dragons deity? Why haven't I heard of it? Who cares? It must be an extremely powerful deity. The Great Eastern Alliance has a history of millions of years. Many deities have been born. What's so strange about it? Stop talking nonsense. Where is the killer of the Netherworld faction that the Feather God is chasing? I heard that he fled to the cavern world of the tree deity. Crack. In the secret chamber of the book deity's family in the cavern world of the book deity. Qin Feichen's face was gloomy. He smashed the table in front of him with a palm. Useless. He is just an all creations. Not only can 2 great prospective deities do nothing to him, but one of them was subdued and the other was chased. Beside him, Wucho didn't even dare to breathe loudly. The Netherworld faction, which claimed to have never failed a mission, failed the mission. However, the failure was not the key. It was an incredible failure. Why were the killers of the Netherworld faction inferior to ordinary killer organizations? After being defeated, they turned to the target they were supposed to kill. After a long time, Wucho said, Young master, now is not the time to care about success or failure. We should be more concerned about the whereabouts of Jin Gang. What? Where is he being chased to? Does he need my attention? Qin Feichen heard the hidden meaning in his words. Wucho said solemnly, Master, Jin Gang came to the cavern world of the book deity and came all the way to the family of the book deity. Upon hearing that, Qin Feichen's eyes flickered. As a killer, he wouldn't be stupid enough to ask me for help and expose his employer, would he? Besides, the Netherworld faction will never disclose the employer's information to killers who are on mission. Thinking of this, Qin Feichen's face did not relax. Instead, he fell in a deep thought. If that is the case, why did he come to the family of the book deity? Wucho said, "Young master, this matter most likely has something to do with Su Yu. I don't know what's going on with that Jin Gang. He is running and yelling at the same time. His purpose in coming to the Great Eastern Alliance is to kill all the descendants of the deities. There is something strange about this." Qin Feichen became serious. After a while, he said, "Let's wait and see. The book deity's treasury has been used last time. It will take some time for it to be reopened again. Otherwise, we should be able to find out Su Yu's purpose very clearly." Wucho nodded slowly. "Yes, I think after this matter, we should use the book deity's treasury to investigate Su Yu himself. I always feel that he is too mysterious. Maybe he has some amazing secret." Upon hearing this, Qin Feichen frowned slightly. The price of using the book deity's treasury once is not high. Using it just for him. All right, anyway, this time we're going to calculate the many variables in the carnival of all gods and the secrets of the various deities. It is good to speculate on him while we are at it. Right at that moment, a panicked report came from outside the door. "Young master, things are bad. The Netherworld faction's killer Jin Gang has run into the family of the book deity and is on a killing spree. The 4th young master, the 7th young master, and the 9th young master are all dead." "What?" Qin Feichen slammed the table and stood up. The Netherworld faction's killer had really come to the family of the book deity. "Send my order. Immediately ask the prospective deity seniors of the family to come and protect me. In addition, send a message to the Glaze Fairy deity and ask her to help." Qin Feichen yelled continuously. Swoosh! Soon, an old prospective deity appeared in front of Qin Feichen. He was also a member of the Qin family and was an artificial prospective deity. Many years ago, he obtained the godly spirit of a prospective deity and successfully became a prospective deity. However, because it was not his own godly spirit, he could not take a step forward and remained in the early stage of the prospective deity. "From now on, do not leave my side under any circumstances." Qin Feichen cherished his life very much. As for the other descendants of the book deity, they were naturally not as important as him. "Yes, young master. Let's go and have a look." When they came to the front yard, they found a burly man who was hunting down the people of the Qin family. 7 or 8 descendants of the book deity had been killed, and only a few descendants were left. Jin Gang killed everyone in sight, but when he caught a glimpse of Qin Feichen and the early-stage prospective deity behind him, he ignored them and continued to hunt down the rest of the family. Looking at the corpses all over the ground and the unscrupulous Jin Gang, Qin Feichen's heart was bleeding. Chapter 1163. Qin Feichen narrowed his eyes and glanced around. "Don't leave me. This might be Su Yu's plot to lure you away from me, so that he can assassinate me. You can't leave me before the Glaze Fairy deity arrives." The old man was anxious, but he understood that Qin Feichen was the heir of the book deity. Anyone else could die except for Qin Feichen. Helpless, the old man could only watch the scene unfold helplessly, until the earth shook violently, and a giant 10,000 feet tall descended upon the book deity's family. Su Yu yelled righteously, "Shameless killer of the Netherworld faction, how dare you assassinate so many experts of the Great Eastern Alliance? Surrender now." Shang Yuanxin muttered to herself. Isn't he being too excited? Seeing Jin Gang had finally started his killing spree, Shang Yuanxin couldn't sit still anymore. She flew down with the golden whip in her hand and caught up with Jin Gang to fight. However, Jin Gang ran into her but didn't fight. On the top of the giant divine soldier, Buti secretly told Su Yu where the important place of the book deity's family was, especially the place where the book deity's treasury was hidden. Su Yu's eyes shone with shrewdness as he secretly passed on the order to Jin Gang. The next moment, Jin Gang, who was slaughtering in the backyard, suddenly fled toward a heavily guarded palace. Seeing that, Qin Feichen's face tightened. That's the book deity's treasury. Miss Yuanxin, please stop him. Sheng Yuanxin was about to nod when Su Yu's yell came from above. Sheng Yuanxin, get out of the way. Let the giant divine soldier come. As soon as he finished speaking, the giant divine soldier's foot stomped down. Sheng Yuanxin glared at Su Yu. Was he going to stomp her to death too? She dodged hurriedly, and the giant divine soldier's foot stomped down. Jin Gang didn't step on him, but the independent space where the book deity's family stored the infinite resources was crushed by the prospective deity's foot. Poof! All of a sudden, the sky full of resources was squeezed out from the crushed space, spraying in all directions like a waterfall. Instantly, the creatures near the crane deity's family were overjoyed and flew into the sky to pick up the treasures. These were rare treasures in the outside world, and any one of them was worth a lot of divine coins. Damn, how can I miss out on helping others by picking up treasures? The tree goddess flew out indignantly. With a thought in her mind, countless vines shot out from the ground and entangled the falling treasures in the air at lightning speed. To be more precise, all living beings within the range of the vines were also the targets of the vines. The spatial rings, ornaments, and even clothes of good quality were all plundered by the vines. As a treasure hunter, this is the attitude you should have. Pick everything up, leave nothing behind. A certain goddess earnestly instructed the nearby treasure hunters. A group of treasure hunters who had their clothes stripped said, "You're robbing us." The resources that had been squeezed out were only 1% of the resources of the book deity's family. The other 99% had been reduced to ashes along with the annihilation of the space. Qin Feichen was furious. "Su Yu, what did you do?" Even Sheng Yuanxin couldn't help but stick out her tongue. Su Yu had made a big mistake by destroying the resources of the book deity's family. It might not contain all the resources of the book deity's family, but it should occupy half of them. After all, it was the accumulation of the book deity's family for thousands of years. Su Yu had a solemn look on his face. "I'm sorry, Nephew Feichen, but the annihilation of the Netherworld faction is a serious matter, so I hope you can bear with it." The giant soldier god stepped on King Kong again. King Kong was currently in a huge palace that looked like a book. Seeing that, the old man was so anxious that his soul almost flew out of his body. He hurried to say, "Don't step on it. Inside is the secret cultivation realm of the book deity's family. It has cost the book deities of the past generations." Puff! With another muffled sound, the huge palace suddenly collapsed. The space inside was rapidly compressed, and finally it exploded with a bang. The mystic realm was finished. Large amounts of resources from the secret realm were blasted out and scattered all over the ground. Then, with a loud laugh, the figure of a certain treasure-hunting goddess appeared and disappeared. The strange thing was that the rest of the treasure hunters had resigned and left the treasure-hunting industry, silently looking at the back view of the treasure-hunting goddess. "Nephew Feichen, please bear with the greater picture," Su Yu said solemnly. Subsequently, King Kong fled to another hall. "Don't step on it. That is the divine path enlightenment room left behind by the book deities of the past generations. It contains the lost divine path enlightenment of the past deities. It is an important place for the book deities family." Puff! "Nephew Feichen, please bear with the greater picture. Don't step on it. That is left behind by the book deities of the past generations." Puff! "Nephew Feichen, please bear with the greater picture. Don't step on it. That is Puff. Nephew Feichen, please bear with the greater picture. Don't." Puff! Nephew Feichen, what did you say you didn't want just now?" King Kong fled all the way. Su Yu controlled the giant soldier god to chase after him, destroying countless important places of the book deity's family along the way. Anyway, King Kong had been to the few places that Buqiei had mentioned that were related to the rise and fall of the book deity's family. Finally, only the most important place was left, the book deity's treasury. The book deity's perseverance was feared by all deities, and it was all thanks to the book deity's treasury. Who wouldn't be afraid of someone who knew their secrets? The deities hated the book deity's treasury to the core, but no one dared to take the lead in destroying it. That was because the book deity had an extremely important backer, who ranked in the top 5 among the 100 deities. That person was also a big shot who could make the Great Eastern Alliance tremble with a stomp of his foot. Therefore, no deity dared to destroy the book deity's treasury. That was also why the book deity dared to travel and was so at ease with the book deity's treasury. King Kong fled to the deepest part of the book deity's family, in front of the 10 Green Mountains. Finally, Qin Feichen could no longer sit still. "Don't worry about me. Stop King Kong in front of the book deity's treasury." The elder received the order. He, who was already drenched in sweat from anxiety, bellowed and chased after King Kong. He had been stuck at the early stage perspective deity level for many years, and his abilities were above King Kong's. As soon as he attacked, strange phenomena appeared in the heavens and earth. King Kong's face was filled with fear. He had no choice but to stop and face the enemy head-on. However, right at that moment, a giant foot kicked at him abruptly, blowing up the elder's body. All that was left was an old soul that leaped out with a lump of godly spirit. Qin Feichen's murderous intent surged as he bellowed, "Su Yu, what are you doing?" Su Yu shrugged his shoulders helplessly. Your perspective deity couldn't take things easy and knocked his head against the foot of the giant divine soldier, shattering his body. What else could I do? I don't have time to comfort someone who can't take things easy in front of a great enemy. The elder's soul was trembling with rage. You were the one who kicked me. How'd I knock into it? Qin Feichen was infuriated by Su Yu's words. However, staring at the giant divine soldier, Qin Feichen was furious, but he dared not stop it. Qin Feichen could sense Su Yu's murderous intent against him very clearly. Once Su Yu found an excuse to attack him, he would destroy him at all costs, just like the elder. Swoosh! King Kong fled into the 10 Green Mountains. Su Yu's lips curled into a cold smile as he maneuvered the giant divine soldier to stomp down abruptly. Bang! The Green Mountains shook, but they were not damaged. From within the 10 Green Mountains, beams of extremely powerful divine energy were emitted. Su Yu's gaze froze. According to Boutier, the book deity's treasury was hidden beneath the 10 Green Mountains. The 10 Green Mountains were defensive barriers left behind by the 10 generations of book deities with the purpose of protecting the book deity's treasury from being destroyed. A mere perspective deity couldn't possibly break through the barriers of the Green Mountains. Seeing that Su Yu couldn't break through the barrier, Qin Feichen heaved a sigh of relief. The book deity's family had established itself in the Great Eastern Alliance by relying on the book deity's treasury that had been accumulated over the generations. If this item was lost, the status of the book deity's family would suffer a disastrous decline. However, Su Yu didn't panic. Instead, a meaningful smile appeared at the corners of his lips. He looked up at the sky and said, "We have failed in our pursuit of the Netherworld faction's assassins. If the deities of the heavens are watching, please lend us a hand." As soon as he finished speaking, a beam of divine energy mixed with complex scents descended from the sky and bombarded the first Green Mountain. All of a sudden, the restrictive Green Mountain set up by the first generation of book deity exploded. A faint smile appeared on Su Yu's face. The deities of the heavens couldn't sit still any longer. They all wanted to seize this opportunity to destroy the book deity's treasury. As he thought of this, Su Yu put on a troubled expression. "Deities of the heavens, this assassin is extremely cunning. I'm afraid 1 or 2 attacks won't be able to hit him. Why don't we attack a few more at the same time?" Upon hearing that, Qin Feichen's face changed drastically. He bellowed furiously, "Who dares to destroy the important place of the book deity's family?" Bang! 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 Dozens of beams of divine energy streaked across the horizon. Nobody knew where they came from, and nobody knew whose sense they belonged to, bombarded the remaining 9 Green Mountains like dense thunderbolts. In an instant, the 9 restrictive Green Mountains turned into ruins. Qin Feichen stared blankly at the shattered Green Mountains, his heart filled with hatred and anger. especially when he discovered that all the deities of the heavens seemed to have gone blind. All 10 green mountains had been blasted to smithereens, and only the area of 10 feet in circumference where Jin Gang stood was intact. He was furious. Great. While the book deity was traveling, the deities secretly helped Su Yu to destroy the book deity's treasury. However, Qin Feichen was powerless to stop them. He could only look on helplessly. The restrictive green mountains were broken, and the book deity's treasury, hidden under the green mountains, was finally revealed. It was a simple and unadorned bookshelf. On the bookshelf, there were about 1,000 books, both old and new, neatly arranged. However, each book was an independent world, and there were as many as billions of books hidden in it. In particular, there was a book named The Record of the 100 Deities. Recorded in it were the secrets of the deities of the heavens. Peeking into the book, Su Yu could feel the impatience of the deities. All the deities were urging Su Yu to destroy the book deity's treasury as soon as possible. With the vastness of the interior space of the book, the information about the deities collected was probably an astronomical figure. If the bookshelf could analyze information on its own, with such a huge amount of information, there was really no secret of the Great Eastern Alliance that the book deity's treasury couldn't deduce. I have to get rid of this thing. Su Yu's eyes narrowed slightly. He urged the giant divine soldier to punch it. However, right at that moment, a horrifying will descended from the heavens. Stop it! The magnificent divine energy contained in the voice radiated across the entire world of the book deity. Su Yu's face changed slightly. Was there a deity obstructing him? Upon closer inspection, the many deities who had attacked just now had all left. It was as if the appearance of this person had made them extremely fearful. The glaze fairy deity. Qin Feichen's anger was swept away, and his face was filled with ecstasy. Chapter 1164. Lu Li, isn't she the law enforcer who participated in the rescue of the Central Prefecture's king? Su Yu's heart moved slightly. The missions of the 9 states really involved the level of gods. He just didn't know the exact relationship between the glaze fairy deity and the Central Prefecture's king. However, it was impossible for Su Yu to stop at the last moment. The book deity's treasury was too dangerous. Once this matter was over and Qin Feichen found out about Su Yu's secret, it would be a terrible disaster. Not to mention killing the law enforcer. The most terrible thing was that the divine 9-dragon cauldron had been discovered. Once the news spread, the deities of the Great Eastern Alliance would immediately become Su Yu's enemies, including the Jing deity and the deities who had finally won the favor and support of Su Yu. Therefore, the book deity's treasury had to be destroyed. He couldn't do it, but someone else could. Amidst the secret urging, Vajra disappeared leisurely. Before the glaze fairy deity's true body arrived, it flew to the bookshelf, sacrificed all the divine power in its god source sphere, and bombarded the bookshelf. No matter how strong the bookshelf was, it was still an object. How could it withstand divine power? However, a shocking wisp of divine power that was wrapped in shocking murderous intent suddenly attacked. Almost in the blink of an eye, it arrived in front of the Vajra with the intention of destroying it. That killing intent, anger, and impatience were exceptionally clear. Su Yu's heart sank. The glaze fairy deity was determined to protect the book deity's treasury. In that case, it would be extremely difficult to destroy the book deity's treasury. However, Su Yu didn't doubt Sheng Yuanxin's words. If he acted rashly now, the glaze fairy deity would have enough reasons to kill him, just like how he was always looking for reasons to kill Qin Feichen. Just as the Vajra was about to fail, an extraterrestrial godly sword that exuded a great godly power that could penetrate the galaxy and the universe arrived later and cut off the glaze fairy deity's godly power. Bang! With a loud bang, another shocking explosion broke out near the Green Mountains. Apart from the prospective deity King Kong, who was safe and sound, the vicinity of the 10 Green Mountains was razed to the ground. Taking advantage of this opportunity, the divine power condensed by King Kong penetrated the bookshelf. Numerous shattering sounds could be heard as books exploded one after another. The millions of years' worth of information collected inside were all buried. In the end, even the bookshelf was destroyed and split into two. Seeing this, Qin Feichen's face stiffened, and his face turned ashen. The glazed fairy deity, who was on her way back, also descended into the book deity's cavern world at this moment. With a thought, she appeared in the book deity's family. Looking at the destruction of 1,000 books that contained all the knowledge, especially the record of 100 gods that revealed the secrets of the gods, the glazed fairy deity was furious. She pointed a finger at Vajra. This finger attack was meant to destroy Vajra's divine origin and soul together. The corners of Su Yu's mouth curled up into a faint smile. Jin Gang flickered to the side, but he didn't run away. Instead, he shouted loudly, "Ha ha! Anyway, I'm going to kill you deity's descendants today. Even if I die, it'll be worth it. However, brat, you've been chasing me for the longest time. Before I die, I'll take you down with me." As he spoke, Jin Gang pounced at Su Yu fiercely. But what happened next shocked everyone. Su Yu said indifferently, "You came at the right time. I'll die with you." He controlled the giant soldier god to lift its leg, and then King Kong rolled to the ground. Shortly after, Su Yu stamped his foot down. Vajra dead. Su Yu moved the foot of the giant soldier god, and King Kong was reduced to a pile of meat paste. Only his soul was holding onto a mass of divine origin, and he was extremely weak. Su Yu shook his head and sighed. What a horrifying way of fighting. Perishing together is so powerful. He almost succeeded. Many of the surrounding creatures were in a state of confusion. Indeed, it was a horrifying way of fighting, burrowing under the feet of the enemy and waiting for death in silence. This was a scam. Qin Feichen was so angry that he vomited blood. Now that things had come to this, how could he not see that Jin Gang was under Su Yu's control? The glazed fairy deity's eyes turned cold as she glanced at Su Yu, surrounded by murderous intentions. However, she looked at the sky with some fear. Just now, a powerful deity had intervened at the last moment, giving Jin Gang the opportunity to destroy the book deity's treasury. Apart from the sword deity, there was no one else who could have such an overwhelming sword power. If she attacked Su Yu without any reason, the sword deity might take this opportunity to attack her. With a flicker of her eyes, the glazed fairy deity locked onto Jin Gang and tried to grab his soul. After searching Jingang's soul, she could find out from his memory whether he was being controlled by Su Yu. If this was true, then plotting to destroy and slaughter the book deity's family was a capital crime. Not even 100 deities could pardon him. However, Jin Gang suddenly smiled miserably. I didn't expect that perishing together with you still couldn't do anything to you, Su Yu. Forget it. A man's words are kind when he is about to die. I have done many evil deeds in my life. Before I die, I will give you the celestial energy sphere. I hope you can help me find a kind person and give him the celestial energy sphere. I will carry my last wish and do good to others, so that my sins can be washed away. As he spoke, Jin Gang handed the celestial energy sphere to Su Yu. He sat down with his legs crossed and looked like he had been freed. Goodbye, Su Yu, goodbye. Beautiful world, I'm leaving. After saying that, with a puff, his soul was annihilated and turned into waves of aura, disappearing from the world. The glazed fairy deity grabbed nothing but air and was furious. This was killing to silence him. How could Su Yu not see such a huge flaw in this matter? As soon as he saw the glazed fairy deity's strange expression, Su Yu immediately ordered Jingang's soul to self-destruct. Looking at the dissipating aura of the soul, Su Yu sighed deeply. Although he had killed countless people in his life, he had an epiphany before his death. He was willing to use the celestial energy sphere to wash away his sins, which was really a great kindness. The onlookers were dumbfounded. Are you insulting the intelligence of the people with such poor acting skills? However, there was no evidence to prove that Jin Gang was controlled by Su Yu. Although they were dumbfounded, they didn't dare to make a presumptuous assertion, because even the glazed fairy deity could only stare at Su Yu coldly and couldn't attack him recklessly. Qin Feichen was so angry that he turned to hatred. Suyu, the book deity's family has been established for thousands of generations, but today, it was destroyed by you. How are you going to compensate me? As far as the eye could see, only less than 10% of the people of the book deity's family, especially the direct descendants of the bloodline, were left. It could be said that all of them had been killed. The resources of the book deity's family, including the training room and the storage room of the divine path, which were extremely important and couldn't be restored, were all destroyed. It could be said that the foundation of the book deity's family was destroyed. This generation might not be able to see it, but the next generation would have nothing. How could the book deity's family continue to thrive? Without the help of external forces, the family would inevitably decline from generation to generation. He didn't hate Suyu at first. He just wanted to capture or kill him, but now he hated Suyu to the core. However, he didn't think that he was innocent of trying to kill Suyu twice. Hearing that, Suyu's face turned cold. Nephew Feichen, I will let bygones be bygones because of your young age. However, if you dare to speak nonsense again, don't blame me for being rude. Chapter 1165. Nephew Feichen, tell me, why did I control the giant? Suyu sneered. I came here to help the book deity's family expel the killers of the Netherworld faction. If I hadn't arrived here earlier, the book deity's family would have been wiped out. How could you keep these important places when you were gone? They would still be taken away by others. So, Nephew Feichen, you should know right from wrong. I, the feather deity, am the savior of the book deity's family. Without me, you wouldn't be where you are now. Instead, you blame me. Ha, ha. I heard that the book deities in the past were all gentlemen who treated people with courtesy. I didn't expect that the current successor is an ungrateful and narrow-minded man. I think you should resign from the position of the young master and give it to someone else. Puff. In the dark, it was as if there was a god who almost laughed out loud. Qin Feichen was so angry that his face turned red. That killer was killed by you. Before he finished his words, the glazed fairy deity stopped him in time. Suyu squinted his eyes and said calmly, What did I do to that killer? Nephew Feichen, tell me. The glazed fairy deity stared at Qin Feichen and shouted, Calm down. Don't be fooled. Being stopped by her, Qin Feichen came back to his senses. When he saw the killing intent in Suyu's eyes, he was a bit surprised. That was close. If he said Jin Gang was ordered by Suyu without any evidence, he would be accused of slandering a deity. Although he wouldn't be sentenced to death, he would be taken away by the Sanluo law enforcing envoys. Sheng Yuanxin was beside him. Once he was taken away, without the protection of the glazed fairy deity, who could predict whether another killer of the Netherworld faction would jump out and kill him on the way back. Thinking of this, Qin Feichen calmed down quickly. Suyu's actions were flawless and left traps everywhere. If he was careless, he would fall into a more dangerous situation. Staring at Suyu coldly, Qin Feichen, who had calmed down, said with a smile, Feather deity, thank you for killing the killers of the Netherworld faction and saving our lives. On behalf of the book deity's cavern world, I thank you sincerely. Looking at him who lowered his head and surrendered, Suyu wasn't happy at all. Instead, his killing intent became more intense. He could even suppress the enmity of nearly having his clan exterminated. His expression was calm. This person was extremely dangerous. It was a pity that the glazed fairy deity was around. Otherwise, she would have been able to get rid of Qin Feichen no matter what. Haha, I'm glad that Nephew Feichen has such thoughts. Suyu said with a faint smile. However, as you can see, in order to save the book deity's family from disaster, we have traveled a long way. I don't mind, but the rest of you need some replenishment. Hearing this, the crowd was secretly shocked. How ruthless! Not only did he exterminate 90% of his clansmen, but he still claimed to be his savior and asked for benefits. If it were them, they would absolutely not tolerate it, even if they had to pierce through the heavens. All right, Qin Feichen smiled and took out a book from his space ring. I have nothing to repay you with. This book contains many martial arts. After a long time, it has developed its own spirituality. It knows the flaws of many cultivation techniques. I'll give this to you all as a token of my gratitude. Wang Yunxian was slightly startled as he transmitted his voice. Hey, psychic book, that's good stuff. Even the book deity's family only has 2 or 3 books. You're going to get something good this time. However, he found that Su Yu's face was full of calmness and killing intent. The more Wang Yunxian endured, the more dangerous Su Yu felt. The 2 purposes of this trip were to destroy the book deity's treasury and kill Qin Feichen. It seemed that the latter was a great hidden danger. This man must be eliminated. Su Yu put away the psychic book with a smile and said, Nephew Feichen, you don't have to be so polite. As members of the Great Eastern Alliance, we should help each other. If the book deity's family is in trouble next time, please inform me, and I will come to your aid immediately. Hearing this, everyone was shocked. This devil was going to come again. Thank you, Feather Deity, Qin Feichen said with a smile. Su Yu nodded and led the crowd to leave, leaving the book deity's family, which was almost destroyed. Looking at Su Yu's departing back, the smile on Qin Feichen's face turned into a gloomy expression only after Su Yu had left. His whole body trembled slightly, and he couldn't help but clench his teeth and clench his fists tightly. He knew this was Su Yu's revenge. What he didn't know was that Su Yu's revenge would be so fierce, vicious, and ruthless. If the Glazed Fairy Deity hadn't been here today, the young master, would have been killed by Su Yu. He was somewhat regretful. If he didn't kill the snake, he would be harmed instead. Su Yu, I will tear you into pieces. Qin Feichen was full of hatred. The Glazed Fairy Deity said, Don't do it now. Tomorrow is the carnival of all gods. Many deities will participate in it. Remember not to be impulsive. Qin Feichen smiled deeply. Of course I won't do it again. However, during the carnival of all gods, some deities will kill him for me and turn him into ashes. You mean? The Glazed Fairy Deity said approvingly. I'm very pleased that you can calm down so quickly. However, as I said, act cautiously and don't expose yourself. Don't worry. This time I will kill him without a burial place. Qin Feichen said coldly. After leaving the book deity's cavern world, Sheng Yuanxin saw Su Yu didn't say a word along the way. She couldn't help but ask curiously, Are you afraid of the Glazed Fairy Deity? Don't worry, your identity is different now. He won't dare to attack you casually. Alas, how on earth can I get rid of Qin Feichen? Su Yu sighed as he murmured to himself. Sheng Yuanxin stopped talking abruptly. She looked at Su Yu in surprise and thought to herself, why is he still thinking about the heir of the tree deity's family after he made them so miserable? This guy is so evil, right? He is full of evil tricks. Wang Yunxian, who was standing aside, was so excited that his face was flushed. It is really exciting to follow you, Su Yu. You subdued the assassins of the Netherworld faction first. Then, you rushed to the tree deity's family and slaughtered almost all the members of the book deity's family. You even destroyed the book deity's treasury, a peerless divine artifact. How satisfying. Especially Qin Feichen. He even had to thank you with a smile and give you a big gift to repay you. I feel so happy just thinking of his face. Wang Yunxian said with a laugh. What should we do next? Should we find his father, the book deity, and teach him a lesson? To Wang Yunxuan's surprise, Su Yu, who was frowning, suddenly said with his eyes lit up, Great idea. What? Sheng Yuanxin and Wang Yunxian were shocked at the same time. They couldn't believe what they had just heard. Chapter 1166. Little Su, I was just talking about it. I didn't dare to beat a deity. If my father found out that I beat a deity, he would beat me up. Wang Yunxian said angrily. Su Yu said with a cold smile, I didn't just beat the book deity. I also wanted to erase them from this world forever. I hope Qin Feichen won't let me down. Them? Isn't there only one book deity? Also, what does this have to do with Qin Feichen? Sheng Yuanxin was full of questions. Since she met Su Yu, she always felt she couldn't keep up with his thoughts. Even Yang Tai couldn't figure out what Su Yu was thinking about with a wry smile. It seems the carnival of all gods will be more interesting, Suyu said with a mysterious smile. Sheng Yuanxin said angrily as she stamped her foot. You always want to do something big. We haven't finished our business yet. What? Yang Tai and Wang Yinchuan's eyes lit up as they stared at them in surprise. Sheng Yuanxin said hurriedly, Don't overthink it. He and I are dealing with a matter together. Then, she pulled Su Yu's sleeve and flew aside. She said seriously, I searched the soul of the demonic god of withered bones. It was weird. His memory was erased by someone. I don't know whether he was ordered to go to Jiuzhou or not. His memory was erased by force? Su Yu squinted his eyes. His soul must have reached a high level in order to achieve this, right? Even though Su Yu had cultivated the illusionary soul realm to the top, he didn't encounter the power of erasing memories. It's more than a high level. Only a deity of the soul path could achieve this. In other words, a deity of the soul path helped him. Sheng Yuanxin said, I know you suspect the Glaze Fairy deity helped him. However, she is not a deity of the soul path, and there is no deity of the soul path in the Great Eastern Alliance. Hearing that, Su Yu squinted his eyes. Someone must have helped him, right? Who was it? Could it be a deity was hiding in the Great Eastern Alliance? My mother said that the more it was like this, the more it proved that Qin Kuo's act of saving the devil race was no small matter. Why would the gods need to take action for an ordinary devil race? What do you know about the devil clan? Sheng Yuanxin frowned. Su Yu thought for a moment, then said, Oh, I remember now. When he was being hunted by the Almighty, he seemed to have threatened that if anyone dared to kill him, his mother and father would not let him off. He also said that he was a combination of a human god and a demon god. Upon hearing this, Sheng Yuanxin was taken aback. No wonder they went to such great lengths to rescue him. The human god hiding behind the scenes is most likely his father or mother. Narrowing down the scope, the god involved in this case must be a human god. This is such an important news. Why did you only tell me now? Sheng Yuanxin was a little angry. Su Yu replied helplessly, I didn't think too much about it. In fact, it would be better for him to release the information bit by bit to gain control of Sheng Yuanxin. It would be useless to release everything at once. I don't want to talk to you anymore. I'm going to tell my mother, Zhang Xiao, about what you did today. Sheng Yuanxin was in a hurry to leave. She stomped her feet and left. Wang Yunxian and Yang Tai exchanged a glance and revealed a playful smile. They said goodbye to Su Yu respectively. Gosh, little brat, I know you have more exciting things to do tomorrow, but I have to go back now. What a disappointment. Wang Yunxian said goodbye to Su Yu. Yang Tai also said, Tomorrow is the carnival of all gods. As the inheritors, we have to go with the deities. So we have to leave now. See you tomorrow, Su Yu said as he folded his hands at them and saw them off. Looking at the enormous giant divine soldier, Su Yu touched his chin and said, Listen to my order. Swish. A ghost appeared in front of Su Yu and said, Yes, Your Excellency. Swish. Su Yu threw him a list, which was filled with all kinds of precious materials. He then said, Ask the intelligence personnel to pay close attention to the materials on this list, such as metal, ores, and the like. If they are found, use the wealth we have in secret to buy them. As for those natural treasures, if they are mature, buy all of them. If not, buy their seeds and roots. Yes, Your Excellency. The ghost left with the list in his hand. The beautiful emerald eyes of the tree goddess rolled. It seems you're training a team in the dark. They're all ghosts, right? Right, they're the most suitable intelligence personnel. So, what do you want to say? Su Yu asked as he turned around. The tree goddess's eyes lit up. Of course. Can I also participate in the carnival of all gods? Have you ever seen a person inviting a mouse into his rice tank? Su Yu said calmly. The tree goddess pouted her red lips. How could you describe a lovely and charming goddess like me as a mouse? Exactly. I did make a mistake. How could I describe you as a mouse? I apologize to the many mouse seniors. I have humiliated your great mouse go. The tree goddess stared at Su Yu, and her emerald eyes were sizing him up. A malicious light flickered in her eyes as she said, I almost forgot. Why didn't I rob a rich man like you? Why did I even consider becoming your subordinate? Grinning, the tree goddess showed a fierce expression. Since you're not willing to give in and not willing to marry me, divorce me, and then happily divide the assets, I can only bear my terrifying fangs. This goddess announces that I'm going to rob you now, oh? You don't want to go to the carnival of all gods tomorrow? There are millions of years of celestial energy spheres in it, which can help you recover your strength completely. Since you want to go our separate ways so soon, fine. I will give you some divine coins. Now, you could go your own way. Hey, what are you talking about? When did I say I want to go our separate ways? The tree goddess was slender and elegant. She had a beautiful and innocent look on her face as she blinked her bright and clear eyes. She was a completely different person from before. Who said he was going to bear his horrible fangs just now? It was a mouse. Then, who said he was going to rob me? It was a blind be***starred who should be struck by lightning. Boom, boom. A few thunderbolts flashed in the clear sky. Our tree goddess's expression did not change. She stood there elegantly and gracefully. How could there be such a shameless person in this world? Suyu sighed deeply as he flew to the crane deity's cavern world alone. The tree goddess caught up with him in an elegant and tranquil manner. She asked softly, "What is the god's sacrifice to the source of gods that you mentioned?" Meow, 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 meow. The tree goddess said without hesitation. Puppy, woof, woof, woof. You are the best among all the gods. Suyu sighed again. The carnival of all gods was held every 10 years to worship the fallen gods. The Great Eastern Alliance established itself in the starry sky. From nothing to today's glory, it was full of bitterness. How many gods died in the battle with the wild beasts? How many gods died in the invasion of the demon race? How many gods died in the conflict between the major races? The current Great Eastern Alliance was built on the sacrifice of the past gods, which made it such a bright and prosperous holy land. The dead gods were buried in the most central cavern world of the Great Eastern Alliance. That cavern world was where the gods were buried. It was the tomb of the gods. Out of respect for them, every 10 years, the gods of the Great Eastern Alliance would go there to worship. Although those gods died, many of them kept their celestial energy sphere intact. Every time they worshipped, their celestial energy sphere would be shaken, and all the cavern worlds would be blessed, making the Great Eastern Alliance more prosperous. Even if their souls were destroyed, there will still ran through the celestial energy sphere, and their hearts were connected to the Great Eastern Alliance. This ceremony was very grand, and all the gods in the Great Eastern Alliance must attend. The next morning, the Jing deity came to invite Suyu. Together, Suyu left the cavern world of the crane deity and went directly to the tomb of the gods. In the center of the cavern world, there were 100 stone pillars, which were also set up by 100 gods representing 100 cavern worlds. Suyu flew to the stone pillar of the crane deity's family and looked around secretly. At present, 40 gods had come, and more than half of the gods had not come. There are less than half of the gods in the Great Eastern Alliance. If the demons attack with all their strength, the consequences will be unimaginable. Suyu thought while looking around secretly. The arrangement of the stone pillars was in order of the gods' ranking. The stone pillars of Suyu and the Jing deity were at the end. Among the top 9 gods, Suyu only knew the sword deity. The other 8 gods were quite strange to him. However, Sheng Yuanxin was standing beside a woman who was covered with gray divine light. Suyu knew this woman was the Sheng deity, who ranked 3rd among the 100 gods. Yang Tai was standing behind a god who was covered with divine coins. Suyu guessed this was the all-access deity, who controlled 1/5 of the wealth of the Great Eastern Alliance. Among the top 20 gods, Suyu found Wang Yinxian was standing behind a pot-bellied god, who should be the instrument deity. At the same time, Suyu also found a familiar man standing behind a stone pillar of a god. Qin Feichen. When the gods were not here, the successors of the gods would worship on behalf of the gods. The book deity has a high position among the 100 gods. Suyu thought to himself. Suddenly, one of the top 20 gods looked at Suyu. Suyu looked at her, and found it was the old woman who was standing beside the glaze fairy deity. She was about 70 or 80 years old. After glancing at Suyu calmly, she looked away as if nothing had happened. Law enforcer, glaze? Suyu said to himself. Swish! All of a sudden, divine light rippled in the sky. A touch of holy and gentle light enveloped people's hearts, making them feel warm and comfortable. From afar, it was a beautiful woman who was covered by a white divine light. Her body was emitting a holy and pure aura. After landing on the top stone pillar lightly, the woman turned around and bowed her head slightly to all the gods and their representatives. That kowtow fully displayed her demeanor. It was gentle, yet it didn't lose its dignity and solemnity. From her words and deeds, Suyu could tell this deity was a very benevolent one. Dakini, Suyu's eyes were filled with awe. The middle-aged woman in front of him was the top deity of the Great Eastern Alliance, Dakini. Although no one called her a deity, everyone knew that Dakini was the supreme deity of the Great Eastern Alliance. Some people called her the deity king secretly. Chapter 1167. Welcome, Dakini, the all-access deity, the Shang deity, the sword deity, and the other deities, as well as their representatives, greeted her. Dakini smiled and said, Get up, the carnival of all gods is about to begin. Like a motherly model of the world, Dakini led the deities to worship. Everyone closed their eyes. The deities released their celestial energy sphere, while Suyu, who was not a deity, could only pray silently. Soon, as if sensing their celestial energy sphere, fluctuations of celestial energy sphere appeared in all directions of the cavern world. The ancient tombs where the gods were buried conveyed the will of the fallen gods. They released the remaining celestial energy sphere one by one. It could be clearly sensed that the whole world was releasing a huge celestial energy sphere, penetrating the cavern world of the tombs of the deities, radiating to the entire Great Eastern Alliance. After a while, Dakini opened her eyes and took back the celestial energy sphere. She looked at the crowd gently and said, The deities have responded. All deities and representatives, please go to the tombs of your deities to comfort the souls. Although the deities were dead, their wills were still there. Strong wills could even be condensed and had independent thinking, which was almost equal to the existence of a soul. The souls of the top 30 deities could condense into wills after they died. Therefore, for the top 30 deity families, every carnival of all gods was a time of great harvest, because those wills often contained the wills of the deities who had protected their families when they were alive. Therefore, if they went to comfort the souls, the will of the ancestors might grant them grace, teach them some unique skills that had not been passed on to the descendants, or give them instructions on cultivation on the spot, and so on. As long as they had the blood of the ancestors, they could be recognized by the ancestors. Shang Yuanxin was worshipping the Shang deity in front of the Shang deities. Suddenly, a figure came over and bowed to the Shang deities. Shang Yuanxin looked at it and was dumbfounded. Feather deity? You didn't worship the crane deity, but my ancestors? After a solemn and respectful worship, Suyu looked straight ahead. The Shang deities of the past have shed their blood for the Great Eastern Alliance. Although I have just joined the alliance, I have great respect for them. I would like to take this opportunity to pay my respects to all of you. I hope that all the Shang deities will bless the Great Eastern Alliance, and that it will never decline. Looking at his serious expression, Shang Yuanxin's eyes were filled with suspicion. She didn't believe that this guy would be so kind. After that, Suyu stood up and said to Shang Yuanxin with a faint smile, The crane deity's family only has the tombs of the third-generation deity. I've worshipped them with all my heart. I'll take this opportunity to worship the deities one by one. Goodbye. After saying that, Suyu left in a carefree manner and went to the next tomb of a deity to worship. Shang Yuanxin muttered in a low voice, This guy, is he planning something again? Many gods' tombs have the will of the gods. If you anger them, no one can save you. Is he Suyu? The Shang deity on the side glanced at Suyu. Shang Yuanxin nodded. Yes, it's him. He's a very smart guy with a belly full of evil tricks. There are indeed a lot of evil plans. They're all targeting the god will. The Shang deity smiled. Her tone was a little funny, but also a little angry. Ah. Shang Yuanxin opened her mouth wide and asked anxiously, Mother, what did he do to our god's will? This guy is too much. How dare he target the god will of our family? The Shang deity said with a faint smile, It's not only the Shang deity. Didn't you notice that he worshipped the tombs of the gods that have condensed the will of the gods? Shang Yuanxin observed carefully. As expected, she found Su Yu chose the tombs of the gods to worship. She couldn't help but gasp. This guy is too bold. How could he target the god will of so many gods? If he angers one of them, he will be in big trouble. The will of the gods also had emotions. Once it was angry, it could attach itself to the skeleton of the gods and control the skeleton of the gods to fight. Although its combat capability couldn't compare with the gods, it was far beyond Su Yu's capability. Trouble? Not necessarily. Although I don't know how he did it, I sensed the aura of the blood of the gods of the Shang deity when he worshipped the tombs of the gods. The Shang deity said calmly. What? Shang Yuanxin stared at the Shang deity in surprise and stammered. Mother, you mean he is my long-lost brother? She never expected Su Yu to be her mother's illegitimate son. The Shang deity's body froze. She turned around and stared at Shang Yuanxin angrily. Nonsense. He imitated the aura of the blood. Oh. Shang Yuanxin let out a long sigh of relief. Fortunately, he is not my brother. Otherwise, he would bully me every day because he is so smart. Since he didn't do anything excessive to the will of the gods of our family, I just pretended not to know, the Shang deity said. Shang Yuanxin's eyes couldn't leave Su Yu anymore. She followed his figure as he jumped over one tomb after another. Finally, he jumped to the front of the tomb of the book deity. Oh no! How dare he worship the tomb of the book deity? The book deity was one of the oldest families in the Great Eastern Alliance. No less than 10 book deities had died in the past generations. There were as many as 5 tombs of the gods that had condensed the will of the gods. As the culprit who destroyed the foundation of the book deity and slaughtered the people of the book deity, wasn't he courting death by going to the front of the tomb? So you didn't notice it at all. When he came to the tombs of the book deities, he was surprised before he worshipped them. This is strange. All the tombs of the book deities are emitting the celestial energy sphere to bless the Great Eastern Alliance. Why is the tomb of the book deity silent? Could it be that none of the book deities have the will to protect the Great Eastern Alliance? His surprise was neither too great nor too small, but everyone present was a god. So how could they not notice? Looking from afar, almost all the tombs of the book deities were emitting the celestial energy sphere to bless the continent. Even the tombs of the crane deity and the Jing deity, whose will couldn't be condensed, still had a faint consciousness left on the continent. Only the tombs of the book deities, including 10 tombs of the book deities, were silent, which formed a sharp contrast among the tombs of the gods. Many gods pretended not to hear it after listening to it. How could they not know this? How could they have no objection? Alas, they were gods who had fallen in the Eastern Divine region after all. Even though their wills had never once left the thought of forming an alliance with the marsh, in the end, the dead were still the most important. Seeing this, they could not say anything. Unexpectedly, Su Yu sighed recklessly and said, In the end, the gods of the Great Eastern Alliance are merciful. Even the remains of the gods whose hearts are not on the continent are placed in the tombs of the gods to bear the worship of trillions of creatures in the Great Eastern Alliance. In my opinion, these 10 tombs of the gods should be thrown out of the tombs of the gods and thrown into the Xing River. Since they are unwilling to contribute to the continent, why are they shamelessly staying on the continent? When the gods heard this, they could not help but look at each other. When they exchanged glances, they all smiled helplessly. Isn't that right? The book deity's family was strange enough. It would be acceptable if the first book deity had no intention of protecting the continent when he was alive. But the 10 generations of book deities, even after their deaths, were not willing to let the continent benefit by releasing the source of God to benefit the common people. Anyone with a discerning eye could tell that the book deity's family had never regarded itself as a member of the Great Eastern Alliance. How could the gods of the Great Eastern Alliance have a good impression of such traitorous gods? Moreover, the book deities of the past had been preparing the treasury of the book deity and probing into the secrets of the gods, which made them even more disgusted. In the eyes of the gods, the book deity's family was a disgusting existence. There were many gods who wanted to throw the tombs of the past book deities into the Xing River. However, the book deities of the past were not weak gods. Moreover, they had a good relationship with the Glaze fairy deity. Therefore, before the book deity's family did something terrible, they could not do anything drastic. That was why when Su Yu destroyed the treasury of the book deity, so many gods secretly helped him. The book deity's family was really unpopular. Many deities snickered when they heard Su Yu say what they wanted to say, but didn't dare to say. Even Sheng Yuanxin said with a slight smile, "Although what he said is outrageous, it is not unreasonable. The 10 tombs of the past book deities are a bit, alas." She sighed. Su Yu sighed even more. In recent decades, the population of the Eastern Divine Realm has skyrocketed, and the land is scarce, especially the tombs of the past. TSK, it is hard to find a suitable place to bury the tombs of the past book deities. As the crane deity of the present generation of the crane deity's family, I haven't found a suitable place to bury me until now. Why don't we move the tombs of the past book deities out of this place? I think since their hearts are not in this continent, moving the tombs of the past book deities will also make them very happy. Why not kill 2 birds with 1 stone? After saying that, Su Yu took out the hoe he had prepared. He was about to dig the tombs. Strangely, many gods present didn't stop Su Yu. It seemed they all acquiesced to Su Yu's nonsense. At this time, in the deepest part of the tombs of the book deities, Qin Feichen was kneeling on the ground respectfully. He was telling the gods in the tombs what happened to the book deity's family recently. His family was slaughtered, and the foundation of the book deity was destroyed. This was all caused by Su Yu alone. Feeling the anger of the book deity's gods, Qin Feichen said with a murderous smile, "Su Yu, if I can't kill you with the help of the 5 gods, I will accept my fate." This was Qin Feichen's plan. Su Yu would definitely be present at the carnival of all gods. He only needed to tell the ancestors of the book deity about what happened in his family. Then, they would definitely jump out of the tombs of the past book deities and kill Su Yu on the spot. Just think about it. The wills of 5 gods. No matter how many prospective deities protected Su Yu, it would be useless. The only problem now was how to lure Su Yu to the tombs of the book deities. If Su Yu attacked from afar, he would be stopped by the other deities. When Qin Feichen was thinking about this, Su Yu's extremely disrespectful voice came into his ears. Qin Feichen was furious at first. How could Su Yu be so disrespectful to the ancestors of the book deities? However, soon, Qin Feichen smiled coldly. Su Yu was really courting death by sending himself to the king of hell. I was worried about how to lure you here, but you sent yourself to me. Not only that, but you also humiliated the ancestors of the book deities. Even without Qin Feichen's complaint, Su Yu's humiliating words and his action of digging the tombs were enough to infuriate the wills of the deities. Su Yu, let's see who can save you. Qin Feichen sneered as if he could see Su Yu's fate. Chapter 1168. Su Yu's shocking behavior finally angered the will left by the previous deities of the book deity. Transparent bodies were floating above the 5 tombs of the gods. They stared at Su Yu with anger in their eyes. This man was bullying the book deity's family. He had killed countless people and destroyed their ancestral graves. How could there be such a vicious man in this world? Suddenly, 5 angry wills full of killing intent ran through the entire cavern world. Boom, boom, boom. At the same time, the 5 tombs were split open. The wills of the deities attached to the remains of the deities and climbed out of the tombs. Sheng Yuanxin opened her mouth widely. People often say that the dead are so angry that they jump out of their coffins. Today, I see a living example. He made the 5 generations of the book deities' family jump out of their coffins in anger. After coming to herself, Sheng Yuanxin said, "Mother, please help him for my sake. Otherwise, even the last deity can't stop the wills of the 5 deities." The Sheng deity nodded slowly. This man was involved in the Jojo case. She didn't want him to die like this. However, the wills of the 5 generations of the book deities had already jumped out of their coffins. 5 jade-like skeletons flew out of the cracks of the tombs, emitting extremely rich celestial energy sphere. Looking closely, one could see a complete celestial energy sphere in the abdomen of each skeleton, which was rotating slowly. Although they had been dead for many years, their celestial energy spheres were not weaker than the celestial energy sphere of the last deity, like the Jing deity. Suyu sneered. "You would rather die with the celestial energy sphere than leave it to the creatures of the Great Eastern Alliance. You don't regard yourself as a deity of the Great Eastern Alliance. How could you accept the worship of the Alliance? Humph, as expected of a noble family. And all hypocrites." Swoosh! Under the control of his will, the corpse in the front attacked like a deity. Horrible divine energy gushed out from his celestial energy sphere and penetrated Su Yu's body. The other deities were far away. Although they were shocked, they couldn't help Su Yu. Although the nearest deity could help Su Yu, she pretended that she didn't see it and continued to worship. "He's courting death. It seems these deities will kill Su Yu even without Qin Feichen's complaint." The glaze fairy deity pondered indifferently. Lu Li, the prospective goddess, sighed softly. The Central Prefecture's king died in the hands of such a stupid junior. He had provoked the tomb of the god of sin on his own initiative and ended up being killed by the deities in the tomb of the god of sin. If this spread out, it would definitely be a big joke. Seeing that Su Yu was in imminent danger, the glazed fairy deity's face changed slightly. She looked at the 10 ancestral tombs in surprise. Above 6 of the ancestral tombs floated transparent will of the gods. They were filled with anger and killing intent. What happened? The glazed fairy deity frowned. Could it be that Su Yu's actions were so infuriating that even her own deity couldn't stand it? Thinking of this, the glazed fairy deity secretly shook her head. It was true that one could do whatever the heavens wanted, but one couldn't live with one's own evil. Boom, boom, boom. The 6 ancestral tombs of the glazed fairy deity cracked open one after another. The deities will attach to the remains and rushed out of the tombs to attack Su Yu. Sheng Yuanxin's expression changed drastically. "Mother, hurry up," the Sheng deity said. "It's too late." If only the deity's will of the book deity's family attacked, she could protect Su Yu from the distance. However, even the deity's will of the glazed fairy deity's family attacked. This double attack was enough to kill Su Yu. Standing in the tombs, Qin Feichen sneered. "Since you have humiliated me so much, I will let you die in the hands of the deities of the past generations in public. After killing you, no one will blame the dead deities." This was a perfect way to kill someone with a borrowed knife. After that, all the responsibility would be on the dead person. Who would blame the dead person? However, the next moment, Qin Feichen was shocked as if he had been struck by lightning. His expression froze. Even the glazed fairy deity's face changed abruptly. She exclaimed, "Impossible!" The ancestral remains of the glazed fairy deity didn't attack Su Yu. Instead, they blocked the attack of the book deity's remains. This sudden scene made many deities feel incredulous. Could it be that the glazed fairy deity secretly asked her ancestors to save Su Yu's life in time? Even Qin Feichen started to doubt it. After the attack of the book deity's remains failed, the other 4 deities' remains dashed out of the tombs and attacked Su Yu with great anger. At the same time, the ancestral remains of the glazed fairy deity also dashed out of the tombs angrily. They surrounded the ancestral remains of the book deity's family and started a group fight. However, apparently, the ancestral remains of the book deity were more powerful than the glazed fairy deity. For so many years, they had never helped any creature on the continent. However, The ancestral remains of the Glaze Fairy deity were released once every 10 years. In comparison, the celestial energy sphere of the Glaze Fairy deity's ancestors was not as good as that of the Book deity's family. Although they outnumbered the Glaze Fairy deity, they were obviously at a disadvantage. With a loud crack, the ancestral remains of the Glaze Fairy deity were broken into pieces. The Glaze Fairy deity was furious. Those were the ancestors of her family. Suyu asked them to stop. The Glaze Fairy deity shouted without hesitation. She knew it must be Suyu's trick. However, Suyu's face was as cold as ice. Glaze Fairy deity, what do you mean by that? Even your ancestors couldn't stand it anymore. They didn't want a group of rebellious deities to be buried next to them. So, they attacked them just now. This is their will. What does it have to do with me? The Glaze Fairy deity was very angry. Then, she turned to Qin Feichin and said, "Ask your ancestors to stop." If the news spread out that the ancestors of the two families were fighting each other, they would definitely become a joke in the Great Eastern Alliance. Qin Feichin shook his head bitterly. Now, the ancestors of the Book deity were very angry. How could they listen to his advice? After all, they were just wills, not souls. Even though they had the ability to think, it was very simple. It was easy to provoke their wills, but difficult to extinguish their anger. The Glaze Fairy deity was very angry. So, she decided to attack them herself. However, before she could do anything, she heard many exclamations. The wills of deities appeared in the ancient tombs of more than a dozen families. They controlled the remains of the deities to climb out of the tombs to attack the ancestors of the Book deity. No matter how abundant the godly energy of the ancestors of the Book deity was, how could they resist the attacks of almost 80 remains of deities? Soon, it was Qin Feichin's turn to look gloomy. The remains of the family of the Book deity were soon smashed into pieces in the fight. As far as the eye could see, not even a complete bone could be found. The situation had developed too fast. When the deities arrived, the remains of the family of the Book deity had been smashed into pieces. Not only that, the remains of the deities from the families of the Book deity bombarded the 10 tombs of the family of the Book deity with their wills. Even the 4 tombs that hadn't been attacked were smashed into pieces. The tombs of the family of the Book deity that had stood for ages were razed to the ground by the other enraged deities overnight. However, it wasn't over yet. Some remains controlled by the wills of the deities looked at Qin Feichin and attacked him. Their wills were full of anger and killing intent. Qin Feichin's face changed dramatically, and he was terrified. Then, a gentle and deep voice, as gentle as that of Mother Earth, echoed in the cavern world. The holy light engulfed the remains of the deity's wills. Under the holy light, the anger and killing intent of the deity's wills disappeared, and the world became peaceful again. The remains of the deities returned to their tombs and fell into a deep sleep. The uprising of the corpses of the gods vanished without a trace. Suyu was shocked by this scene. Is this the strength of the Dakini, the #1 deity of the Great Eastern Alliance? She can purify the angry wills of all the deities with a single thought. Looking at the holy Dakini in the sky from afar, Suyu became more vigilant. This deity was extremely horrible. Suyu felt lucky that he didn't plan to attack this deity just now. Otherwise, he would have been suppressed by her when the battle started. Even so, Suyu's plan was disrupted by her. Destroying the tombs of the family of the Book deity was just a side effect. The real purpose was to kill Qin Feichin in the chaos. At the last moment, the Dakini attacked. The remains of the deities returned, leaving the broken remains of the family of the Book deity and Qin Feichin, who was full of anger and grievance. It was Suyu. He knew it was Suyu's trick. However, he didn't have any evidence. He didn't even know how Suyu used the remains of the deities to attack the family of the Book deity. How could he have any evidence? They didn't know Suyu had an amazing imitation ability. He worshipped in front of the tombs of each family to show the strength of the bloodline of that family. Then, the descendants of those families who had the strength of their bloodline were killed in front of them. How could the deities of the guardian families not be angry? Although the deities looked solemn, they couldn't help but laugh secretly. Although the remains of their ancestors were also used by Suyu, they didn't mind using them to destroy the remains of the family of the book deity. Of course, they were still a bit dissatisfied. Who would be happy that an outsider could make the deities attack them? Suyu? What did you do? The Shang deity asked discontentedly. Suyu was confused. How could I know? Maybe it's because of the book deity's family. 10 generations of deities have refused to leave any living creatures, and the wills of the deities here have long been displeased with them. Now that I've exposed the hypocrisy of the ancestors of the book deities, instead of thinking about their mistakes and releasing the godly energy sphere, they want to kill me, a junior who dares to speak the truth. This has infuriated the wills of many deities, and that's why this scene has happened. Suyu's words were dignified. The deities looked at each other. None of them believed a word of Suyu's words. However, except for the glazed fairy deity, they all chose to ignore it. Ridiculous! The glazed fairy deity was extremely angry. The deities have been living in peace for so many years. Why did something happen this year? Tell me, what did you do? After all, not every deity could sense Suyu's little trick like the Shang deity could. Suyu said with a fake smile, I don't know what I did. Why don't you figure out for me, glazed fairy deity? The glazed fairy deity was annoyed. Suyu was extremely cunning and meticulous. It was extremely difficult to catch him. As a matter of fact, the glazed fairy deity hated the ancestors of the book deity. As a descendant of the book deity, I think you should think for the sake of your ancestors. You should either move your ancestral tombs away or move the ancestral tombs of the book deity away. In this way, your ancestors can rest in peace. Otherwise, they might jump out again one day. That's not good. So you said sincerely. Chapter 1169. The deities exchanged glances with each other. Could they take this opportunity to drive the book deity's family out of the continent and expel the book deity from the alliance of 100 deities? In the past, the deities didn't dare to mention the book deity's treasury because they were afraid that their secrets would be exposed. Now, they could think about it. If the book deity built another book deity's treasury, their secrets would still be exposed after several generations, which would be very bad. While everyone was lost in their thoughts, the Dakini spoke gently. You are all heroes who have protected the land. Even if you do not wish to leave your legacy behind after your death, you should not forget what you have done when you were alive. It would be too narrow-minded of us to criticize you for this. As gods, we should forgive you. Hearing this, Suyu frowned slightly. Was she saying that he was narrow-minded? Suyu didn't agree with her. When did the book deity's family protect the continent? If they really had the will to protect the continent, how could they not have the will to protect the continent after their death? 1 or 2 generations were fine, but 10 generations were like this. So you couldn't help but doubt the book deity's family's intention in the alliance. No matter how he looked at it, they didn't take the Great Eastern Alliance as their route. They just occupied a seat among the 100 deities. The Dakini's words were full of tolerance and love. However, in Suyu's eyes, she was a saint who didn't distinguish good from bad. They treated the book deity's family so generously, but they didn't do anything. Instead, they schemed to grasp the weaknesses of the gods. Then, what would the gods who shed blood for the alliance and their descendants think? Many deities felt sorry and discontented, but they couldn't do anything about it. The Dakini's words weren't wrong. They just couldn't be convinced. Although they were not convinced, they could only be convinced. As you wish, Dakini. Suyu sighed silently. He finally understood why the book deity's family could survive for so long. It was all because of the king of all deities who was a saint. Staring at the Dakini, Suyu became more vigilant. There were 2 kinds of saints in the world. One was the pure and loving ones, and the other was the ones with ulterior motives. He didn't know which kind of Dakini belonged to. The carnival of all gods is over. Deities, please go back. The world of the god's tomb is about to be closed, the Dakini said. With such an absurd disturbance, the carnival of all gods could only end early. Originally, the remains of the deities should have continued to release the source of God for an entire year. However, what happened just now had interrupted the process. They could no longer continue, so they could only end the process prematurely. Yes, the deities returned to their respective families, repaired the cracks in the tomb of the god of sin, and then left in scattered groups. All in all, even though it lacked some nourishment from the divine origin, the gods were still quite satisfied with what happened today. Suyu had said what they didn't dare to say and did what they didn't dare to do. Ha ha! This feather deity is very interesting. Such a hothead is perfect to deal with the hypocrites of the book deity's family. The Jing deity, who was at the side, snorted disdainfully. If they really treated him as a hothead, he would die a terrible death. It's just a pity that Our Lady Dakini is too compassionate. Sigh. That's why she allowed the book deity's family to exist for such a long time, even accumulating such a forbidden item as the book deity's treasury. All the gods sighed helplessly. Tombs of the gods, in front of the tomb of the book god. Qin Feichen looked at the wreckage on the ground, his eyes filled with hatred. Suyu, you are too cruel. He wanted to destroy the book deity's family from the inside out, including the tombs of the past generations. The glazed fairy deity's face was gloomy. Collect all the remains first, especially the divine origin. Hearing this, Qin Feichen endured the endless shame and hatred and cleaned up everything. His face was filled with boundless hatred. You killed the family of the book deity. You destroyed the foundation of the book deity for generations. You destroyed the ancestors of the book deity. This hatred is absolutely irreconcilable, Qin Feichen said coldly. The glazed fairy deity couldn't help but sympathize with Suyu. Suyu was too cruel. When he attacked, he was ruthless and domineering. In just 2 days, he destroyed the book deity's family with an excuse. If Qin Feichen had been more cautious, the situation might have been different. Feichen, don't be impulsive. Wait for the book deity to come back. He will handle everything properly, Qin Feichen said with a self-deprecating smile. It will take a year for my father to come back. Uncle, will Suyu wait patiently for a year? Of course not. The glazed fairy deity said, before the book deity comes back, you will be in the glazed fairy family. Do you think Suyu can attack my family? The glazed fairy deity's eyes were filled with cold light. Qin Feichen shook his head. Uncle Lu Xian, the situation is different now. In the past, when we controlled the book deity's treasury, the deities were afraid of us and didn't dare to attack the book deity's family. However, didn't you see the situation today? Without the protection of the Dakini, the ancestors of the book deity's family would have been banished from the continent by them. If Suyu attacks me with great fanfare, the deities will help him secretly. Uncle Lu Xian, how can you resist the secret help of so many deities? The glazed fairy deity didn't speak. Her eyes were filled with hatred. Indeed, the situation was different now. The deities had joined forces to help Suyu destroy the book deity's treasury. If Suyu attacked the glazed fairy family openly and destroyed the book deity's family, those deities would help Suyu secretly even if they didn't show up. All the deities were on Suyu's side. So, there's no point in trying to escape. Qin Feichen said, the only way for me to survive is to take drastic measures and kill him. Qin Feichen felt remorseful that his family was ruined and he had no home to return to. He shouldn't have attacked Suyu. If he could do it all over again, he would never attack Suyu and put himself in a desperate situation alone. Do you have a solution? The glazed fairy deity asked. Qin Feichen nodded slowly. Yes, it's a drastic move. A move that even the deities in the world dare not save Suyu. Tell me about it. I will try my best to help you if I can. The glazed fairy deity raised her eyebrows. She knew what Qin Feichen was going to do. Qin Feichen said, Suyu seems to be powerful now, but he has a fatal weakness. That is, he violated the alliance of 100 deities. He killed the law enforcer Qin Kwa with his own hands. Just this alone is a capital offense, and no one will be able to pardon it. Those who kill law enforcers will be killed without mercy. This is the covenant signed by 100 deities, and it is the highest rule. Even the deities themselves can't violate it. If this truth is revealed, no one, including the Jing deity and the Dakini, the king of all deities, can forgive Su Yu's crime. However, if he reveals the cause and effect to the public, won't we be in a passive position? After all, Qin Kuo was killed to protect the Central Prefecture's king. This can't be hidden from the deities. Colluding with the demon race is a more serious crime than killing a law enforcer. It is a taboo clause in the alliance of 100 deities. Once violated, not only will the person be implicated, but the whole family will also be uprooted. The lightest punishment will be expulsion from the Great Eastern Alliance. The glazed fairy deity said seriously. Qin Feichen's plan was really dangerous. This plan is really dangerous, and it is a bit suicidal. Because of this, Su Yu will never expect that I would take such a risk. Only in this way can we catch him by surprise. Qin Feichen's face was full of confidence. In addition, in order to eliminate the risk, we should not give Su Yu any chance to speak. We must kill him before he meets the 100 deities. The glazed fairy deity thought about it. Even if Su Yu's death aroused the suspicion of the deities, he was dead. What was the use of suspicion? Uncle Glazed Fairy Deity, I need your help in secret. Otherwise, it will be very difficult for me to assassinate Su Yu alone. The Glazed Fairy Deity thought about it. Was it really worth it to bet the whole Glaze fairy family to kill Su Yu? However, when she realized that Su Yu was the only person who knew that the Glaze fairy family and the Book deity's family colluded with the demon race, she suddenly wanted to kill him. Okay, let's discuss the plan now. We must kill Su Yu. Standing in front of the tomb of the Crane deity's family, Su Yu did not move for a long time. His mind was filled with countless thoughts. If he failed to kill Qin Feichen with a borrowed knife, there would be endless troubles in the future. If Qin Feichen is not stupid, he should know that after leaving the tomb of the deities, I will do everything I can to kill him before the Book deity comes back. He should also know that the time, place, and people are all in my hands now. No matter where he hides, he will die. He knows he is in a desperate situation, so he can only fight back. Su Yu's eyes were shining. He had analyzed Qin Feichen's current state and even his psychological activities thoroughly. If I were Qin Feichen, in this desperate situation, I would take drastic measures and take the risk to launch a fatal blow to me. He would expose me for killing a law enforcer. In order to stop me from talking and bury the truth that they colluded with the demon race, I will never have a chance to defend myself. Before I meet the deities, I will be assassinated. If Qin Feichen was here, he would definitely be overwhelmed with shock, as Su Yu had analyzed his plan perfectly. If that's the case, the situation is really dangerous, Su Yu said to himself. Su Yu thought to himself, how to get rid of the accusation and how to avoid the assassination of deity-level strongmen were extremely difficult. With Su Yu's current strength, he couldn't resist the attack of any deity. Even if he was lucky enough to avoid the assassination of the deities and see the deities, how could he get rid of the crime? If he couldn't get rid of the crime, he would still die. These two desperate situations troubled Su Yu and made him frown deeply. Qin Feichen was really a person who would cause endless troubles in the future. It would be extremely dangerous if he was not killed. Humph! Let's see who is better in the end. Su Yu's eyes were filled with cold light. The next battle should be the last one between Su Yu and Qin Feichen. If Su Yu was defeated, he would die without a burial place. If Qin Feichen was defeated, not only him, but also the Book deity and the related deities who participated in the battle would be uprooted. It was foreseeable that the next battle between them would be full of great changes and endless dangers. Next, let's see how many benefits I can get in the tomb of the deities. Su Yu had a sense of urgency in his heart. In the final situation, the final battle between him and the family of the Book deity and the related deities was coming. After leaving the world of the tomb of the deities, Su Yu met the Jing deity. Where is Sheng Yuanxin? The Jing deity's eyes flashed. He was nervous and anxious. Su Yu said, she is on her way. As expected, Sheng Yuanxin rushed over. She looked at Su Yu and the Jing deity and said vigilantly, are we really going to do this? Once we are discovered, it will be a serious crime that will anger the deities, especially if those deities find out it will be even more dangerous.